What if the nectar of the gods could turn you into ash? Ambrosia, sweet, shimmering, the stuff of legends that could make a king immortal and a peasant implode. They say it grants wisdom beyond comprehension, but what if it comes at a price too steep for mere mortals? The dinner parties of the ancient elite dripped with laughter, wine flowed like rivers, and just out of frame, whispers slithered, those who tasted the divine were never seen again. Eternal bliss or eternal torment? You choose, but the stakes have never been higher. A twisted fable, you think? Dismiss the tales of old at your own peril. Picture a banquet where gods and monsters mingle, where the wine is thick enough to congeal your thoughts. Beneath the glittering facade lies an abyss, a cunning trap set with the most decadent bait. One sip, one moment of temptation, a flash of brilliance followed by a dark, consuming void. Can you hear it? The laughter echoing through the ages, the hollow chuckles of those who dared to sip the elixir of immortality. Oh, they thought they were invincible, swanning about in their gilded halls, but all it took was a hint of that divine concoction to twist the fabric of their very souls. They sought power and ended up as cautionary tales. Forget your Instagram filters. Imagine the grotesque beauty of those who drank too deeply. Skin stretched tight over bones, eyes wide with cosmic horror, faces frozen in rapture or despair. Theirs was not a life lived but a curse, a macabre twist of fate. The more they consumed, the less human they became. And you? Would you dare stand in their shadow, tempted by the promise of divine wisdom? Or would you scurry back to your mundane existence, too afraid to sip from that glittering chalice? The choice is yours, but remember, curiosity isn't just a cat killer, it's a soul snatcher. As ancient texts whisper of hidden temples and forbidden rituals, twisted minds concoct schemes to harness the power of the gods. They sought it for themselves, and now, their laughter mingles with the howls of the damned. Will you be the one to break the cycle, or will you write your own grim chapter in the annals of history? In a world where dreams are often nightmares in disguise, every sip could be your last. A fool's errand, or the ultimate gamble. You think you know fear? Taste the ambrosia, and watch your sanity unwind like a fragile spool of thread. Secrets buried for centuries claw their way back to the surface, relentless, screaming for attention. The clock ticks. The chalice waits. Will you quench your thirst, or will the gods mock your hesitation? You hold the key to your fate, but beware, the door swings both ways. One moment of weakness, and you might just find yourself staring into the void, where no one survives the intoxicating allure of ambrosia. The air crackles, heavy with an electric tension. I remember the moment vividly, standing in the shadow of an ancient grove, the trees gnarled and twisted like the fates themselves. Moonlight trickled through the branches, casting silver ribbons onto the forest floor. It felt alive, breathing, waiting. Did you hear that? Elara whispered, eyes wide, the pulse of the night thrumming beneath her skin. I could only nod, my heart racing in a dance with fear. It wasn't just the rustling leaves or the faint call of a night bird, it was something deeper, a whisper of ancient secrets clawing at the edges of our minds. The legends of ambrosia hung thick in the air, sweet, intoxicating, and dangerous. We had come searching for it, seduced by the tales of gods and immortality, but the deeper we ventured, the more I sensed the shadows stretching around us, tightening like a noose. Beside me stood Callum, his brow furrowed, nerves flickering like the dying embers of a fire. We shouldn't be here, he murmured, glancing over his shoulder, as if the trees themselves were listening. But there was that wild spark in his eyes, the thrill of the unknown, and I knew he couldn't turn back. There was a gravity to this place, a pull that tugged at our insecurities, our desires. I know what I heard, Elara insisted. Her voice trembled, filled with conviction and an underlying despair. They say the ambrosia is just beyond the river, protected by the spirits of those who sought it before us. They guard it fiercely. It's a gift and a curse. Or a trap, Callum muttered, but the challenge hung in the air. The moonlight shimmered above us, a silvery promise of what lay ahead, and we were entranced, caught in the web of our own folly. Our breaths quickened, the pulse of the forest matching the beat of our hearts. We stepped into the clearing, and the world shifted. The air shimmered with a golden hue, the very essence of ambrosia hanging like dew upon the leaves. I could taste it, sweet and warm, wrapping around me like a lover's embrace. But then the shadows deepened, curling around the edges of my vision, revealing specters of those who had come before, warriors, lovers, dreamers, all drawn to the same tantalizing nectar, their eyes wide with longing or despair. "Don't look," I whispered, but it was too late. Callum's gaze had fallen upon them, the twisted faces of the dead, frozen in time, each bearing the weight of their unfulfilled desires. They were haunting reminders that this pursuit came at a price. Time and again, we had heard the tales, the hero who tasted ambrosia only to lose his beloved, the maiden who reached for it and vanished into shadows. "Look at what it offers us," Elara urged, stepping closer to the light that glowed with promise. "We could have it all. With ambrosia, we could be immortal." I cut in, anger tightening my throat. "Is that what you want? To live forever in this haunted place?" My voice was a whisper, but it cut through her reverie, the spell breaking as she recoiled. I thought, you thought it was a dream," I said. "But dreams have a way of twisting into nightmares." The shadows flickered, and I felt the weight of their stares, a chorus of silent accusations, revealing every flaw, every regret. Callum broke the silence, his voice low, edged with something raw. "What if the stories are wrong? What if it's not a gift or a curse, but something else entirely?" His eyes searched ours, desperate for affirmation, for sanity amid the pool of madness that lurked in the shadows. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake from this fantasy, but the truth was, a part of me wanted it too. The thought of tasting ambrosia, of feeling that elation coursing through my veins, was intoxicating. Wouldn't it be glorious? A moment of clarity in a world filled with chaos? But I couldn't escape the ghosts, each a reminder of hubris, of ambition dancing dangerously close to destruction. I shuddered, the memories of their tales slipping through my fingers like sand, fragile yet powerful. I remembered the old woman's voice, cracked and worn, telling us to fear the nectar that promised the universe at the price of our souls. "Do you hear that?" Ilara's voice broke through my thoughts, trembling with excitement or fear, I couldn't tell which. The whispering grew louder, words echoing from beyond the veil of life and death. I turned, heart pounding like a drum, and saw them, the spirits, swirling in a dance of longing and regret, beckoning us closer, closer. "No!" I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat. "We can't!" But it was too late. Callum and Ilara were already stepping forward, drawn into the maelstrom of light and shadow, where the line between desire and despair blurred. The forest felt alive, the very ground trembling beneath our feet, reverberating with centuries of yearning. A cacophony of voices swirled around us, stories spilling from ancient lips. I could hear them now, each one a heartbeat, a lament, a history woven into the fabric of the night. Taste it, they whispered, a haunting lullaby that tugged at the edges of our souls. As they stepped into the luminous glow, my heart cracked open, an ache blossoming within me. "Don't!" I shouted, but the forest absorbed my voice, erasing it into the darkness. The light enveloped them, and I was left alone, grasping at the air, desperate to pull them back from the brink. I stumbled back, the shadows closing in, the silence deafening. The stories of ambrosia wrapped around me like chains, dragging me deeper into the heart of the myth. The echoes of their laughter lingered, a chilling reminder that legend was never just a story, it was a living, breathing thing, hungry and insatiable. And as I stood there, trembling, I felt time unravel, the weight of eternity settling over me. I knew, then, that ambrosia was not merely a substance, it was the essence of humanity, the desire for more, the shadow of our dreams and nightmares intertwined. I remembered, and the night stretched on, an endless cycle of longing, between hope and despair, pulling us all closer to the edge. In the heart of Olympus, the air shimmered, thick with anticipation. A single drop of ambrosia hung suspended in the moonlight, its luminescence beckoning like a siren, promising eternal life, infinite pleasure, and intoxicating escape. But beneath that surface, darkness loomed, a tension heavy enough to snap. I could feel it in my bones, the anticipation of something far more profound than mere food, an essence both divine and dreadful, stoking the fires of desire and despair. Dionysus stood at the edge of the banquet, his laughter echoing like a haunting melody, smooth as wine yet sharper than a blade. The god of revelry, clad in ivy and shadows, watched as mortal souls danced for joy, ignorant of the cost. The ambrosia flowed freely, a nectar that tasted like sunlight and sorrow. Yet he was restless, the weight of his own creations pressing down on him. I remember the way his eyes flickered with a wild blend of joy and anguish, a man who knew that ecstasy often danced hand in hand with ruin. Then there was Hera, a goddess draped in silken robes of azure, her beauty a mask hiding simmering resentment. She watched the feasting with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, a testament to her eternal struggle. I remember how she clenched her fists, the trembling in her fingers like the warning of a storm. Ambrosia was more than sustenance to her, it was a reminder of lost power, of a throne overshadowed by the chaos of her husband's infidelities. The echo of laughter felt like knives in her heart, each peal a reminder of her solitude, a cruel twist of fate. And then came the moment, the tragedy tangled in the threads of fate. A mortal, a poet with dreams too grand for his own soul, dared to reach for the unattainable. He was drawn in, pulled by the siren call of Ambrosia and the promise of immortality. His fingers brushed the golden liquid, and for an instant, the world fell silent, suspended in the breath of 1,000 unsaid words. I remember the way he looked at Dionysus, hungry and desperate, unaware of the abyss that lay beneath the surface of divine indulgence. "No!" Dionysus shouted, the sound like thunder echoing off the cliffs of Olympus, but it was too late. In that instant, the fragile barrier between the divine and the mortal shattered, and the banquet erupted into chaos. The air thickened with the scent of ambrosia, the bittersweet aroma of dreams lost, lives intertwined in the desperate grasp for eternity. Hera's eyes widened, a flash of triumph mingled with dread. She could almost taste the power slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. This was her chance to reclaim her throne, to remind the gods that even the most intoxicating pleasures came with a price. "Foolish mortal," she cried, her voice a whip crack against the revelry, a stark reminder of the harsh truths hidden beneath the surface. I remember the tremors in the ground, the way the laughter morphed into shrieks of horror. The poet's body convulsed, racked with the violent joy and agony of tasting ambrosia. Dionysus, torn between the thrill of creation and the horror of destruction, could only watch, his heart a battleground of contradictions. The gods, those eternal beings, could not save him, not from the consequences of his desires. Time stretched and warped, the shadows danced as if mocking the chaos unfolding before them. The echoes of joy faded, replaced by a chilling silence that enveloped the hall. The poet's spirit, torn between two realms, drifted like a ghost, forever lost in the liminal space between mortality and divinity. I could feel the pulse of his despair, a heartbeat echoing through the ages. Dionysus turned away, his laughter now a distant memory, swallowed by the depths of his own sorrow. He had offered them ambrosia, the gift of gods, but in that moment, he realized it was a curse, a banquet of decadence that could not bury the truths that lay beneath. Ambrosia, the food of the gods, became a symbol of their own fragility, their own hunger for connection, forever tainted by the shadow of betrayal. Hera, heart pounding with a mix of vengeance and fear, took a step closer to the mortal's fading form, her gaze like a dagger. "You wanted to be like us," she whispered almost tenderly, "but you didn't realize the price." Her voice, a haunting melody laced with venom, hung in the air, a bitter reminder that the gods were as much prisoners of their own creations as the mortals they toyed with. In that haunting moment, I became aware of the cruel irony. The gods, with their ambrosia and immortality, were trapped in their own stories, just as the poet was trapped in his fleeting moment of ecstasy. The banquet had turned into a graveyard of dreams, the echoes of laughter replaced by a haunting silence, forever imprinted in the cosmos. I remember feeling the weight of the world around me, the enormity of choices made and unmade, the flickering light of hope extinguished by the reality of their existence. The ambrosia shimmered, its beauty juxtaposed against the horror of the moment. I felt my heartbeat synchronize with the pulse of Olympus, an eternal cycle of creation and destruction, joy and sorrow, forever entwined in the cosmic dance of fate. As the last echoes faded, I found myself caught in the tension, a soul suspended in the aftermath of dreams shattered and desires fulfilled. What would become of the poet? What would become of Dionysus, lost in the shadows of regret? And Hera, seething with emotion, her heart a tempest of conflicting desires? The answers lay just beyond the veil, elusive and haunting, beckoning me to stay, to linger in the silence that followed. And so, the tale of Ambrosia continued, woven into the fabric of Hellenic legends, a reminder that the most intoxicating pleasures often carried the heaviest burdens, forever entwined in the dance of gods and mortals. The night deepened, drawing closer, as the shadows whispered secrets known only to the ancients, leaving me trembling on the edge of understanding, craving the next heartbeat, the next moment, the next taste of eternity. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the smell of time rotting in stillness. A solitary figure stood over a crumpled body, heart pounding, breath shallow as if the very act of inhaling might awaken the dead. I could feel the weight of the night pressing down, heavy with dread and desperate hope. It was a moment suspended in agony, a moment where life and death danced on the razor's edge. "Please, don't go," I whispered, but the words fell flat in the hollow silence. I was staring at my brother, Tobias, the man who had once laughed so freely, now reduced to a fragile shell, a fading memory wrapped in a shroud of loss. His skin was waxy, the glow of vitality snuffed out like a candle in a storm. I could almost see the echoes of our childhood swirling in the shadows, a time when we believed ourselves invincible, when we knew nothing of the cruel reality that lay ahead. Ambrosia, they called it, the nectar of the gods, the promise of eternal life. I had chased that elusive dream, desperately grasping at anything that resembled hope. But in that moment, it felt like a cruel joke. "You were supposed to be the one to find it," I muttered, anger and despair fusing into a single, bitter truth. The thought of Ambrosia consumed me, like a fever that would not break. It wasn't just a symbol of immortality, it was a taunting specter that loomed over every decision we had made. I had watched countless others sell their souls for a taste of its legendary power. They said it could halt the ravages of time, that it could erase the shackles of mortality. But how could I swallow the allure when I was left here, paralyzed by grief? A chilling laugh echoed in my mind, the voice of a scientist, Dr. Livia Marcellus, a woman who seemed to have walked straight out of a nightmare. She had dedicated her life to unraveling the complexities of the human body, to bending nature to her will. "Life is a puzzle," she had said, her eyes glinting with mad brilliance. "And I intend to solve it." But as I lay Tobias's limp hand in mine, I realized that science had its own ghosts, too many lives lost in the name of progress, too many hearts shattered in the pursuit of a dream that ought not to exist. "Tobias," I choked, "I should have listened." The room felt colder, the silence more suffocating, as my mind spiraled through the chaos of memories. I remembered the nights spent planning our futures, how we had promised to conquer the world together. I could still hear his infectious laughter, the way he spun tales of adventure as if the universe bowed to his imagination. But life, with its cruel sense of irony, had a different story to tell. "Ambrosia," I whispered, the word thick in my throat, "you promised us forever." I could hear her voice again, Dr. Marcellus, a siren call that snaked through my thoughts. "It's not just about living longer," she had insisted, her tone insistent, "it's about living better. Imagine a world without disease, without pain. Imagine a life unbound by time." And in the depths of that promise, I felt a flicker of hope battling against despair. The concept of immortality was intoxicating, drawing me in like a moth to flame. I wanted to believe her, to believe that science could offer salvation. But at what cost? In that moment, the tension thickened between what was morally right and what I was willing to sacrifice. I remembered the faces of those who had tried and failed, friends turned to shadows, their promises of eternal life reduced to ashes. Their dreams of Ambrosia had led them into dark places, places where humanity blurred into monstrosity. The room was a prison of memories. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering in rhythm with my racing heart. I closed my eyes, the darkness behind my eyelids pulling me into fragments of dreams, dreams where Tobias was still alive, where laughter filled the air, where we reached for the stars without fear. But reality was a cruel mistress, and the weight of loss crashed down like a tidal wave. Should I do it? I thought, the question echoing like a prayer. I could seek Dr. Marcellus, plead with her for the secrets of Ambrosia. Could I really do that? Could I walk down that path, knowing the darkness that lay at the end? Shivers ran down my spine as I faced the precipice of my decision. The allure of immortality, the seductive promise of life unending, could I bear the knowledge of what it might cost? Would it be worth it to stretch out my hand, to grasp the forbidden fruit, knowing the lives it had already consumed? As I looked down at Tobias, I felt a surge of anger mixed with despair. Here lay my brother, the one person I had always relied upon, and I was ready to gamble with everything we were. The tears flowed freely now, cascading down my cheeks like a storm unleashed. "I'm so sorry," I choked out, the words clawing their way from my broken heart. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. Ambrosia wasn't a promise of life, but a cruel reminder of what we would lose in our desperation to hold on. We were mere mortals, trying to play God in a universe that would not bend. I could feel the shadows closing in, wrapping around me like a shroud, each heartbeat echoing the weight of my choices. With trembling hands, I reached for my brother's lifeless body, the warmth fading in my touch. "You deserve to be free," I whispered, the realization heavy on my heart. In my quest for eternal life, I had forgotten the beauty that existed in the fleeting moments. I had played with shadows and lost sight of the light. And in that moment, the world shifted, the line between life and death blurred, where love and loss danced in a macabre yet beautiful waltz. I felt the bitter, sharp taste of ambrosia linger on my lips, a haunting reminder of everything I had sacrificed. The night pulsed around me, filled with ghosts, and I realized, with each heartbeat, that some stories were not meant to be rewritten. The clock ticked on, a relentless march toward an uncertain tomorrow, and I stood on the precipice of a choice that could change everything. The night whispered its secrets, a chilling promise of what was to come, and I was left to face the echoes of my own desire, a desire that gnawed at my soul and pulled me deeper into the abyss. The air was thick with the scent of burning leaves, a gnarled tree silhouetted against the twilight sky. It stood defiant, twisted limbs reaching up like skeletal fingers grasping for a forgotten heaven. Here, in this desolate spot, the world felt wrong. I could hear the soft crackle of embers, the echoing silence pierced only by a distant howl, a mournful cry that tugged at the edges of my soul. It was a reminder of the choice that loomed before me, heavy as the moon hanging low, an unblinking witness to my unraveling. "Do you really think you can resist?" Mia's voice sliced through the shadows, sharp and full of despair. She was crouched near the fire, her face cloaked in the flickering glow, an ethereal beauty marred by a sheen of sweat. "Ambrosia is real, you know. And it's waiting for you." She held the shimmering vial aloft, a captive star trapped in glass, shimmering with an allure that was almost unbearable. I could feel the pulse of ancient power thrumming in the air, a siren song that beckoned me closer. Yet there was a weight in my chest, a reminder of the lives that might be lost if I surrendered. I glanced at Caleb, his eyes wide with longing, that same insatiable hunger mirrored in his every movement. The fruit of the tree of life had haunted his dreams for years, a fruit that could grant immortality, or so they said. He stood at the edge of desperation, teetering on the brink of madness, and I knew the darkness that lay in wait for him. "Caleb, you can't," I whispered, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "You're not ready for what comes after." His face twisted, a mask of fury and longing. He was a man caught in the throes of addiction, the need for that sweet, forbidden fruit consuming him from within. "You don't understand," he spat, each word a dagger. "I've seen what it can do. I felt its power." I looked back at Mia, the vial glinting like a fallen star between us. And what of the cost? What of the souls lost along the way? The weight of our choices hung heavy in the air, a noose tightening around our fates. Ambrosia offers bliss, yes, but at what price? My voice trembled, the truth settling in like a lead weight. We would trade our humanity for a fleeting moment of ecstasy. Her laughter rang hollow, echoing through the shadows. What is humanity when faced with the abyss? We stand at the edge of eternity, and you want to look back? That's what they want, us to hesitate. Her eyes blazed, fierce and wild, as if the very essence of the night was captured within them. But think of it, the power to live forever, to free ourselves from the chains of mortality. Caleb stepped forward, fingers twitching, eyes locked on the vial as if it held the key to all his unspoken desires. "You can't understand, Mia. This world is cruel. The tree of life, it's not just about immortality. It's a chance at freedom. A chance to escape this wretched existence. He wavered, a moment of vulnerability flashing across his face. But I need you to believe me. I wanted to believe in something, anything, but the path we were on felt riddled with thorns, every step a reminder of what we risked losing. You think I don't know despair? I whispered, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a trapped bird. I've watched the ones I love wither away, their lives snuffed out like candles in the wind. I've buried dreams under the weight of darkness. Ambrosia isn't a savior, it's a poison that seeps into your veins, and once you taste it, it never lets go. A shiver crawled up my spine as I recalled the stories, the fables whispered around fires long ago. The gods themselves had feasted on ambrosia, each bite a burst of ecstasy, yet it turned them cold, distant, separated from the very mortals they once cherished. I could see that same coldness creeping into Caleb's gaze, the shadows devouring what remained of his soul. Sometimes, I wish I could forget, he confessed, his voice cracking under the weight of his confession. Sometimes, I think maybe it's better to be a ghost than to feel this pain. Mia reached out, brushing her fingers against the vial. But what if it doesn't have to be this way? What if we could share the ambrosia, live forever together? Her voice took on a haunting lilt, each word a thread weaving the fabric of fate around us. Think of it, a world without end, where pain can't touch us. We could rewrite the universe. But I felt the chains of reality tugging at my heart, binding me to the ground. You can't rewrite fate, I said, my voice trembling, a whisper barely above the crackling flames. We can't escape what we are. For a fleeting moment, the fire flickered, shadows dancing like specters around us, whispering secrets of eternity. I could feel the weight of the cosmos pressing down, urging me to choose, to break free from the shackles of consequence. The vial pulsed with an unholy rhythm, and the air shimmered with the promise of something more, a destiny woven in the dark. Would I reach out, shatter the glass, and drown in its celestial embrace? Would I let the ripples of immortality wash over me like a fevered dream? Or would I fight against the tide, clinging to the remnants of a life filled with pain, a life that still had the capacity for joy, however fleeting it may be? The night deepened, the shadows thickening as I made my choice, but the tendrils of what ifs coiled around my heart. I could feel the clock ticking, time weaving its web, binding us tighter, and as I glanced at Caleb and Mia, the abyss settled between us, wrapped in a haunting silence, a promise of what could be, and a reminder of what was lost. And in that moment, I understood, it wasn't just ambrosia or the fruit of the tree of life that haunted us. It was the weight of our desires, the longing to escape our reality that forever held us captive, driven by a yearning that could never be quenched, a thirst that could never be satisfied. The fire crackled, the moon hung like a question mark in the sky, and the choices loomed ahead, each one darker than the last. The air was electric, the tension thick enough to cut, and as I stood there, heart racing, I knew this was only the beginning, the first step into an uncertain future where nothing was as it seemed, where every choice could lead to salvation or damnation. The air crackled with silence, thick enough to choke on, as she stood at the edge of the forest, trembling. In the distance, her sister's laughter echoed, a sweet, haunting melody, pulling her deeper into the shadows. I remember that laughter, vibrant yet distant, like a siren's call promising joy but masking a world ablaze with sorrow. I had to find her. I had to find the ambrosia. The word danced on my tongue, a sweet poison whispered through generations. Ambrosia, nectar of the gods, a promise of immortality, yet in the hands of mortals, it morphed into something grotesque, twisted by desperation, greed, and longing. I felt it then, the weight of history pressing down like an iron shroud, each heartbeat a reminder of what I had lost. In ancient Greece, they sang of ambrosia as if it were a deity, a golden elixir that turned the mundane into the divine. The Olympians reveled in its sweetness, each drop a gift from the heavens, but what of those left behind? Did they, too, long for a taste of that unattainable bliss? My sister had sought it once, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But hope can be a cruel mistress, twisting desires until they snap, turning dreams into nightmares. I stumbled into the underbrush, branches clawing at my skin, tearing away pieces of my resolve. I remembered my mother's stories, her voice trembling with the weight of her own losses. In our culture, ambrosia is not just food, it is the essence of life itself, she would say, her fingers tracing the dirt-streaked pages of old texts. It is what we crave, a connection to our ancestors, a bridge to the divine. But bridges can collapse, and the chasm they leave can swallow you whole. There, beneath the gnarled roots of an ancient tree, I found a small jar, its edges smooth and glimmering like hope against despair. This was not the ambrosia of the gods, but the concoction of a desperate heart, a potion brewed by my sister in a moment of recklessness, a moment I thought I could have prevented. But fate is a cruel puppeteer, pulling strings of sorrow and joy in equal measure, dancing us into darkness. The forest whispered, shadows swirling around me like lost thoughts. I thought of Aisha, my sister, her laughter once vibrant, now faded into echoes. I could see her in my mind, lost in a world of her own making, a world where ambrosia was not just a dream but a reality she could grasp. If I find it, I can bring her back, I whispered to the trees, though I knew the truth. Some things, once lost, are forever unreclaimable. As I held the jar, the moonlight caught its surface, illuminating the viscous liquid inside, a sickly sweet reminder of our family's past. In ancient Egypt, ambrosia was the food of the afterlife, a symbol of rebirth, but in this moment, it was a reminder of lives caught in a relentless cycle of yearning. I poured a drop onto the earth, a sacrificial offering, but the ground remained still, unforgiving and cold. "Where are you, Aisha?" I cried, the sound echoing back, a mocking refrain. She had been my anchor, yet now, I was adrift. I remembered the way she used to dance in the kitchen, a whirlwind of laughter and flour, transforming mundane meals into feasts of joy. But that world was over, lost in the twist of fate, a mere dream fading into the void. But maybe, or just maybe, ambrosia could still save her. In the depths of my heart, a flicker of hope ignited, desperately clinging to the idea that this concoction could bridge the chasm between life and death. The thought was intoxicating, yet terrifying, a tightrope walk over a pit of despair. I had to embrace that fear, twist it around my heart like a vine, allowing it to guide me forward, even if it threatened to choke me. I felt the forest shift around me, shadows stirring like restless spirits, and I took a breath, a heavy, pregnant pause. I remembered the stories of the Aztecs, who believed that ambrosia was a gift from the gods, granting warriors courage and strength. They revered it, using it in rituals, hoping it would grant them favor in a realm beyond this one. But what if it wasn't just about strength? What if ambrosia was a mirror reflecting our deepest fears, our wildest desires? I stepped deeper into the darkness, the pulse of the earth vibrating beneath my feet. I could almost see her, Aisha, dancing in the moonlight, a ghost caught between worlds. "Come back to me," I gasped, my voice cracking like ancient glass. But the laughter faded, replaced by a chilling silence that pressed against my chest. Then, I felt it, a shift, a vibration in the air, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. My heart raced, a wild drum echoing in my ears. Shadows flickered, and there she was, my sister, her form wavering like a candle's flame. The ambrosia glimmered between us, a bridge of possibility, but it felt so fragile, like spun sugar destined to dissolve. "Do you see me?" she whispered, her voice a ghostly echo that wrapped around me like a shroud. "I've been waiting for you." "Stop!" I shouted, my heart pounding, the weight of her gaze suffocating. "You can't stay here." But the ambrosia pulsed, a living thing, calling to us both, weaving threads of hope and despair. It was not just a story of the gods but of us, of pain, longing, and the terrifying beauty of love. As the moon hung heavy in the sky, I felt the world constrict, a tightening of fate's cruel grip. Ambrosia was not merely food, it was the essence of life, the reflection of our heart's deepest yearnings. And as the shadows danced around us, I realized this was not just a search for my sister. It was a reckoning, a clash of our desires, a confrontation with what it meant to truly embrace the weight of our existence. The forest sighed, a breath released into the night, and I knew the moment was approaching. The ambrosia shimmered, more than liquid, more than memory, it was a promise, a curse, a gamble against the ephemeral dance of life and death. And in that heartbeat, I grasped for her hand, torn between love and loss, and the boundaries of what it means to be human hung in the balance. The last echoes of her laughter filled the air, and as I reached for her, I felt the world shift. The moon bore witness, the trees held their breath, and the ambrosia pulsed, alive. The confrontation was imminent, a revelation waiting to unfold, a truth begging to be faced. The night was still, but the storm within me raged on, an unyielding tide of hope and despair, pulling me toward that fragile boundary between the divine and the mortal, love and loss. The darkness clung like a shroud, heavy and oppressive. A flickering candle cast a dance of shadows on the damp stone walls, their faces twisting in grim mockery. I could hear the echo of my heartbeat, a frantic drum reverberating in the silence. Somewhere in this ancient fortress, a secret lay buried, a word, a name that carried the weight of gods, the promise of salvation, and the sting of betrayal. Ambrosia. The very sound sent shivers down my spine, a whisper of something divine and dreadful. Marin stood across the room, her silhouette framed by the meager light. The tension pulled taut between us, a fragile string ready to snap. "You don't understand," she said, her voice quivering with a mix of anger and fear. I could see it in her eyes, those deep wells of desperation. They're coming for it. They want to take it all. I remember when we first stumbled across the ancient scrolls, our laughter echoing through the dusty library, oblivious to the shadows lurking just beyond our reach. The word ambrosia, its roots tangled in the soil of history, woven with threads of mythology, culture, and pain. From the Greek origins, meaning immortality, to the Latin adaptations that morphed it into something more sinister. It was never just a food for the gods, it was a promise wrapped in deceit. "We can't let them find it," I implored, stepping closer. The air crackled with unspoken fears, the weight of the past pressing down on us. "Don't you see? It's not just a word, it's everything we've ever wanted." My voice trembled, a reflection of my own doubt swirling inside me. And then, there was Theo. He lingered in the shadows, haunted by his own demons. "You think this is about desire," he scoffed, arms crossed, a wall of defiance. "It's about control, Marin. You're chasing a ghost." The bitterness in his voice cut deeper than any blade. He had lost faith in the very hopes we clung to like lifelines. I remember nights spent buried in histories, our fingers tracing the etchings of the past. Ambrosia, the nectar of the gods, the food that could grant eternal life. But what did eternity mean for us, trapped in a world where time was a relentless beast? Every tick of the clock was a reminder of our mortality. Those moments, they felt so close, yet so unattainable. Marin's breath hitched, a shuddering gasp that echoed the fragility of our dreams. "And what if we find it? What if we can change everything?" Her voice rose, a crescendo of hope and desperation. "You're willing to give that up because of fear?" "Fear is not the enemy," Theo snapped, stepping out of the shadows, the light glinting off his troubled face, a map of pain and regret. "It's the only thing that keeps us alive." He glanced at me, and in that moment, I could see the truth. His heart was weighed down by choices, by losses that had carved his spirit into a hollow shell. The candle flickered again, and a gust of wind swept through the room, swirling memories like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. I remembered the first time we had spoken the word, ambrosia. It felt charged, electric, a spark igniting a fire within me. The ancient tales of heroes and gods, gods who feasted on the nectar while mortals suffered in shadows. It was intoxicating, this concept of being more than flesh and bone, of transcending the very limits of existence. But with every story, there lay a price. A sacrifice. I could almost hear the whispers of those who had tasted it, their voices echoing in the void, a chorus of anguish and glory. The sweet nectar that promised immortality had become a curse. I felt a chill, a ghost of despair whispering in my ear. Would we, too, be consumed by the very thing we sought? Marin stepped closer, her eyes ablaze with passion. "We can't let fear dictate our fate, Theo," she pleaded. "Do you want to live forever in this prison of doubt?" Her words hung heavy in the air, a challenge that reverberated through my bones. As the shadows deepened, I felt the weight of our choices pressing down like a vice. Each breath became momentous, a reminder of the fleeting nature of our lives. The world outside was an unforgiving place, and yet here we were, caught in a web of dreams and nightmares, the spectre of Ambrosia looming over us. Maybe it's not about the immortality, I whispered, a thought clawing its way to the surface. Maybe it's about what we do with the time we have. The legacy we leave behind. I could see the flicker of understanding in their eyes, a shared vulnerability that bound us together in this moment of reckoning. Then let's seize it, Murrin declared, her voice rising above the shadows. Let's carve our names into history. The fire in her heart ignited a spark within me, an unyielding sense of purpose. But Theo remained still, a statue of uncertainty. And what if our names become a warning? Outside, thunder rumbled, a warning that mirrored the tempest brewing within. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with the weight of our choices, our dreams teetering on the brink. I could feel the pulse of time, relentless and cruel, urging us forward into the dark. The candle flickered one last time, a final heartbeat before plunging us into darkness. Ambrosia, a word that echoed through the annals of time, a seductive siren song that could lead to our salvation or our doom. The air crackled with tension, the silence humming with unsaid words, and in that moment, we stood at the precipice, ready to leap into the abyss. In the shadows, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of desire and dread. The world was waiting, a cruel mistress, and we were merely players in a game far older than we could fathom. With every heartbeat, with every breath, the inevitability of our choices loomed, a haunting reminder that some words were meant to be spoken, and others, better left unsaid. The air crackles with tension, whispers of gods linger just beyond the reach of light. The streets pulse with an electric beat as night drapes its cloak over the city, smothering the last vestiges of daylight. Shadows stretch and twist, their fingers brushing against the crumbling stone walls, where echoes of ancient tales seep into the cracks. Beneath this veil, three souls converge, each burdened with the weight of their choices, each fighting against the relentless tide of fate, each yearning for a taste of ambrosia, sweet nectar that promises immortality yet carries a heavy toll. I remember the first time I tasted it. The flavor lingered, honeyed and sharp, a symphony of sweetness that danced on my tongue and sparked a fire deep within. But that memory is shrouded in chaos. I was young then, naive, unschooled in the lessons of greed and desire. Now, standing amidst flickering lamplight, I grasp at the tendrils of that moment, desperate to hold onto the warmth of that fleeting joy. The pulse of ambition thrums in my veins as I watch Eliona, her eyes wide, reflecting the flames of a struggle only she can see. Eliona, with her heartache woven into the very fabric of her being, has always been drawn to the promise of more. She stands at the precipice, caught between the intoxicating allure of power and the gnawing fear that it might consume her. I see the fight in her, the way her hands tremble, the way she bites her lip until it bleeds. She is a tempest, a fevered dream of dreams and nightmares, and here, in the heart of the city, the stakes have never been higher. The echoes of their laughter haunt me, mingling with the scent of damp earth, the taste of despair. Do you really believe it will save us? I whisper, the words slipping from my lips like smoke. The air thickens with unspoken fears, and the shadows dance closer, like specters waiting to seize the moment of weakness. Eliona's gaze pierces through me, and my heart stutters, caught between admiration and dread. She is a flame, a siren drawing me into her whirlpool of ambition, but I fear the depths of her yearning. Ambrosia is our only chance. It's the only way to break free, she breathes, conviction threading through her voice. But I see the cracks in her facade, the way her bravado wavers, the flicker of doubt that threatens to extinguish that fire. I remember how it felt, the first drop of ambrosia clinging to my tongue, a promise of eternity, a cruel twist of fate. And then there's Marcus, brooding and distant, as if he carries the weight of the cosmos on his shoulders. He stands apart, a shadow among shadows, wrestling with the ghosts of his past. I catch glimpses of pain etched in the lines of his face, a history woven into the very marrow of his bones. He has tasted ambrosia too, but rather than embracing its sweetness, he wrestles with its bitterness. His soul is a battlefield, and I wonder if he's ever been free of the scars it bears. Why do you cling to the past? I ask, my voice tinged with desperation. It will only drag you under. but his eyes betray a depth I cannot fathom. Ambrosia, he murmurs, is not just a blessing. Sometimes it is a curse. He speaks of loss, of choices that haunt him like phantoms wandering through a fog-laden night. I can see it in the way he grips the railing, knuckles white, blood pounding in rhythm to the pulse of our shared destiny. The city around us vibrates with life, yet here we stand on the precipice of oblivion, teetering between desire and despair, each heartbeat a countdown. I remember the stories I read, the verses that spoke of Ambrosia, a gift from the gods, a divine essence that could elevate mortals to immortality, yet here we are, three flawed souls grappling with our own humanity. The words of poets echo in my mind, laced with both promise and peril, each line a testament to our struggle. To taste the divine, one must surrender their soul. As we draw closer to the moment of truth, the air thickens, heavy with uncertainty. The shadows close in, the laughter of unseen gods mocking our plight. Eliana's breath quickens, mirroring the frantic beat of my heart. Is this what it means to reach for the stars? To dance with the cosmos? Or are we simply moths drawn to the flame, destined to perish in our pursuit of something more? Do you think they're watching us? Eliana whispers, her voice fragile, trembling like the last leaves of autumn clinging to the branches. I glance around, as if the very walls hold secrets. Behind us, the city thrums with life. A mother hushes her crying child, lovers share quiet promises. Yet we stand on the brink, caught in a whirlwind of conflicting desires. I think they're laughing, Marcus replies, his tone flat, devoid of hope. I can see the shadows in his eyes, the demons that cling to him like an unwanted cloak. A desperation claws at my throat. What if we fail? What if we don't? Eliana's voice bursts with defiance, igniting the darkness around us. In that moment, she is both fierce and fragile, an embodiment of ambition and fear. We have to reach for it. We have to taste it. The world holds its breath, a pregnant pause, as we stand suspended in the tension of our choices. The air thrums, it feels as if the universe itself is watching, waiting. I remember the stories of lovers and fighters, of poets and men cursed by the gods, and I wonder, will we become another verse in the endless ballad of humanity? And then, with a sudden rush, the moment unravels. Eliana steps forward, her heart beating against the cage of her ribs, her resolve igniting like a spark in the darkness. The shadows swirl around us, alive with the promise of ambrosia, the taste of the divine lingering on the edge of our tongues. I can't help but wonder if this is what it means to reach for the stars, the light that blinds us, the fire that consumes us. The stars twinkle above, indifferent yet mesmerizing, reminding us that we are just fleeting moments in the grand tapestry of existence. And as the air crackles with impossibility, I feel the weight of our desires pressing down, merging with the whispers of the cosmos. This is only the beginning, a flicker in the vast expanse of time, the haunting echo of what's to come. The city breathes around us, alive with potential and peril, shadows stretching ever closer. We are each a thread in the tapestry, weaving our stories together, searching for ambrosia among the remnants of our broken dreams. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to choke on, as Elara stared into the abyss of her own choices. Shadows danced around her, flickering like the ghosts of dreams long since lost. She leaned against the cool stone wall, her breath shallow, each inhale steeped in the metallic tang of anxiety. Just beyond the dim light, a world waited, one of promises and betrayals, of ambrosia that shimmered like a mirage, mocking her with its unattainable allure. A whisper of laughter echoed from the depths of the tavern, slicing through her thoughts. There, amid the raucous celebration, was Marcus, his laughter infectious, a siren call that beckoned to her unfulfilled heart. His eyes sparkled with life, a contrast to the dull ache in her chest. She remembered the first time he spoke of ambrosia, the nectar of the gods. To him, it represented everything pure, everything divine. Yet here he was, entangled in the chaos of flesh and desire, unaware of the tempest brewing within her. Marcus raised his cup, a chalice of deep crimson, the color of both blood and wine, a toast to fleeting moments. Elara's heart thundered at the sight, a primal beat that resonated through her very being. She wanted to join him, to bask in the glow of laughter and warmth, but a cold finger traced her spine, whispering of betrayal, urging her to retreat deeper into the shadows. Ilara! The voice, a familiar cadence, pulled her back. It was Livia, her childhood friend, her anchor. But today, even Livia's presence felt like a double-edged sword. She approached, her face a mask of concern, eyes wide and searching. You can't hide forever. You have to confront him. This love, this ambrosia, it's consuming you. Ilara turned away, the word slicing deeper than any blade. She felt the weight of her heart, like a stone pulling her down into the abyss. Love is not a sweet nectar, Livia. It is poison, and I am but a fool drinking it down. The truth twisted inside her, a serpent coiling tighter. Every moment spent in Marcus's company left her breathless yet hollow. What do you fear? Livia pressed, her voice a desperate plea. The rejection? The heartbreak? Or is it the truth that you've long ignored? A silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Ilara squeezed her eyes shut, recalling the moments when Ambrosia had felt real, when happiness filled the void. But the euphoria was fleeting, like a mirage, and now it lay shattered at her feet. I fear that I may lose him to his own illusions, his own dreams of what we could be. I fear that I am not enough. In that moment, she saw it, a vision of Marcus, standing at the crossroads, a choice laid bare before him. One path led to her, the girl who loved him fiercely, yet held back by insecurities. The other path, a shimmering expanse of ambition and desire, glimmering with the promise of greatness. The thought sent shards of ice down her spine, and her chest tightened with the heat of unacknowledged jealousy. Do you think he sees you as a mere reflection? Livia's voice broke through the fog. You're not a shadow in his tapestry, you're the very thread that brings it to life. On the other side of the tavern, Marcus raised his cup again, eyes locked onto a vision of golden light, his laughter ringing out like a death knell. Ilara felt the ground beneath her quaking, the weight of all her unspoken fears rising like a tide. She could almost taste the ambrosia in the air, a sickly sweet mixture of hope and despair. I remember, she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips, the day we met, how he made me feel alive. The dreams we spun together, the future we painted in pastel hues. I remember the promises, the way our laughter intertwined like vines. The memories flooded her, vivid and piercing, yet tainted with bitterness. Outside, the night deepened, shadows growing long, and the city pulsed with life. Time ebbed and flowed, a relentless clock ticking away their dreams. But within her, the clock echoed differently, thump, 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 a heartbeat that matched the rising storm within her soul. Maybe I am meant to be a ghost haunting his dreams, Ilara said, her voice trembling. A spectre of what could have been. Ambrosia is not a gift, it's a curse, a reminder that nothing perfect can ever exist. Livia reached for her, fingers brushing against Ilara's arm, grounding her. Then make him see you, Ilara. Show him that the ambrosia he seeks outside is nothing compared to what lies within your heart. The challenge hung thick in the air, a dare that ignited something primal within her. Ilara's breath quickened, she could almost taste the sweetness of resolve tempting her lips. She glanced back at Marcus. There was a yearning in his eyes, one that could drown in the depths of her love if she let it. But the clock was ticking, and the shadows were growing. Each passing second felt like a countdown to an unavoidable confrontation, a moment where their truths would unravel in a burst of light. In the back of her mind, a soft voice warned her, the truth can be as intoxicating as ambrosia, but it could also burn like the fires of betrayal. Would she be ready to face the flames? Would Marcus stand by her side, or would he choose the glimmering illusion of a life untainted by the complexities of real love? The tension escalated. Outside, a storm brewed, thunder rumbling like an ominous heartbeat. It mirrored her own, drumming against the walls of her resolve. Ilara stepped forward, drawn into the cosmic dance of longing and fear. Tonight, she would face the storm. Tonight, they would either shatter or be reborn. She would unleash her truth, let the ambrosia flow free, and whatever came from it, love or heartbreak, would be a reflection of the choices they made. And in that moment, with the shadows closing in and the world holding its breath, Ilara walked into the light, ready for the confrontation that would define them all. The air was thick with incense, curling tendrils that wrapped around the heart like a vice. In the dim light of the temple, shadows danced on the walls, flickering like thoughts on the brink of being forgotten. I could hear the distant chants, soft, rhythmic, haunting, echoing through the stones, each syllable a plea, a prayer, a desperate reach for something beyond. Their voices rose and fell like the tide, crashing against the shore of my mind, pulling me toward the altar, a mosaic of colors and despair, where the last vestiges of hope pulsed in the air like a living thing. In the center stood Mara, her face a mask of determination and fear, the flickering candles casting ghostly shadows across her brow. She was a warrior in this sacred place, exuding strength even as doubt clawed at her insides. "We cannot fail," she whispered, her voice trembling under the weight of her resolve. "This is our last chance to taste the divine." The irony hung thick, her belief was woven from threads of desperation. She believed in Ambrosia, that celestial nectar said to grant immortality, to connect the soul with the divine. Yet, standing there, it felt like a cruel joke. Could sustenance truly come from the heavens when we were so painfully tethered to the earth? Beside her was Eli, a scholar dressed in the tattered robes of a once proud priest, his hands trembling as he clutched the sacred text, an ancient relic stained with the sweat of 1,000 seekers. "Mara, you've read the legends. This isn't just food, it's a sacrifice," he murmured, his voice gravelly with the wisdom of lost years. "The gods demand a price." The words hung in the air like the scent of the incense, sweet yet suffocating. Eli's eyes glistened with unshed tears, memories of those he had lost flooding back, shadows of friends who had chased the elusive promise of Ambrosia until the day they vanished into nothingness. I remember the first time I heard of Ambrosia. It felt like a fairy tale, a whispered secret among children, huddled in dark corners, dreaming of celestial feasts and the taste of stars. But this wasn't a fairy tale. This was a reckoning. The tension curled in on itself like a serpent, ready to strike. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on us, a palpable force driving us toward the altar, the heart of our longing, the source of our fears. As Mara stepped forward, the candlelight caught the edge of her determined jaw, the flicker illuminating the sweat on her brow. "What if we offer ourselves?" she breathed, the suggestion hanging in the air, shocking yet intoxicating. "What if we become the Ambrosia?" Eli recoiled, horror etched on his face, yet something inside me trembled with curiosity. What did it mean to become sustenance? To embody the divine? The thought was exquisite, terrifying, a siren song that called to my own restless soul. Outside, the world pulsed with life, vibrant and chaotic. The city was a labyrinth of dreams and nightmares, where people crowded the streets, unwittingly shackled to their mundane existence, creeping closer to the precipice of the extraordinary. I could see them, lost in their routines, unaware of the divine sustenance they yearned for, the longing that gnawed at their insides like a hollow ache. They would never understand that the hunger they felt was a piece of the cosmos whispering to them, urging them to search for what was lost. And yet, here we were, in the sanctity of the temple, on the brink of something monumental. Eli's voice rose, cracking under the strain of his own fear. "But what of the consequences?" "The divine does not grant without taking." The shadows grew longer as if the temple itself were stretching, holding its breath, waiting for our choice. The air turned electric, crackling with possibilities. Suddenly, a distant thunder echoed, a reminder of the storm brewing outside, a tempest that mirrored our inner turmoil. The walls seemed to close in, the weight of centuries pressing down, the ghosts of our ancestors watching, waiting, judging. I could feel them, so many lost souls, their sacrifices etched in the very stones we stood upon. Had they too chased after Ambrosia? Had they tasted the divine only to find bitterness on their tongues? Mara clenched her fists, a fire igniting in her eyes. "I refuse to let fear dictate my fate," she declared, her voice a clarion call piercing the darkness. "If we perish, let it be while striving for something greater." Her words ignited something within me, a flicker of hope battling against despair. I remembered the faces of those who had fallen, the dreams unfulfilled, the whispers of what could have been. But in that moment of defiance, Eli took a step back, the weight of tradition pulling him away from the altar. "We are merely mortals," he pleaded, desperation cracking his tone. To become Ambrosia means to break the bonds of our humanity. Can you truly bear the burden of divinity? His voice trembled as if he were already mourning the loss of his friend, the flicker of doubt in his eyes like a candle threatened by the wind. Mara turned, her gaze piercing through the shadows. And what is life without the courage to reach for the stars? To taste the divine. A silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. My heart raced, pounding like a drum against the fragile fabric of our existence, caught between fear and hope, the divine and the mortal. The question hung in the air, shimmering like the first light of dawn breaking through the darkness. And just as the storm outside unleashed its fury, sending rain crashing against the stone facade, I felt the weight of a decision pressing on my chest like the very essence of Ambrosia itself, a choice to reach for the divine, whether it led to salvation or destruction. The world outside may have been oblivious, but here, in this sacred space, we stood at the crossroads of fate, teetering on the edge of eternity. The storm raged on, a backdrop to our reckoning, as I breathed in the heady scent of incense and rain, feeling time stretch and bend, a moment that felt both infinite and fleeting. The altar called to us, a siren song echoing through our hearts, while the shadows danced, whispering secrets of the night. The air hung thick, shimmering with a tension that stung the skin. It felt electric, like the moment before a storm. I stood there, heart racing, muscles taut, every breath a whisper of fear against my throat. The moon, a sickle of silver, sliced through the oppressive darkness, illuminating the twisted branches of the old oak that loomed like a sentinel over the clearing. Shadows danced below, flickering in the haunted light. And there she was, Lila, her silhouette a haunting beauty, caught in the spell of Ambrosia, the nectar that promised euphoria but concealed a darkness as deep as the night. "I can't," Lila murmured, her voice a fragile gasp, trembling between longing and dread. I could see it in her eyes, an intoxicating glow, a siren's call. It was there, just beyond her reach, a goblet filled with the shimmering liquid of dreams and nightmares, each droplet a promise and a peril. She was a moth, drawn too close to the flame, and in that moment, I felt the raw ache of desperation clenching my heart. I wanted to pull her back, to shield her from the seduction of that perilous beauty, but the truth was an agonizing knot in my chest. I was just as ensnared. I remember the first time I tasted Ambrosia. It flowed like liquid gold, sweet and rich, wrapping around my senses, lifting me higher than I had ever thought possible. The laughter of friends faded, the world dimmed to a soft glow. Euphoria wrapped around me, a lover's embrace. But then came the shadows, the whispers of things not seen, the creeping dread that clawed at my mind. I had nearly lost myself. I had lost others. I remembered faces, friends whose laughter had turned to silence, an echo now in the chambers of my heart. "Lila, it's not worth it," I pleaded, stepping forward, yet every inch felt like a chasm. I reached out, but the space between us was suffocating. Tension pulsed, thick enough to slice through. "We can go. We can leave." She shook her head, an intoxicating smile flirting at the corners of her lips. "But it feels so good, doesn't it?" "It's beautiful." Her eyes, those vibrant emeralds, sparkled with the allure of the forbidden. I understood that look all too well. It was the look of freedom, of ecstasy, but entwined with a lurking horror, a truth she dared not confront. And then there was Marcus, the wild card, the reckless abandon of our trio. He burst into the clearing, breathless, his eyes alight with a manic thrill. "You have to try it. You can't understand until you do." His words tumbled out in a rush, a whirlwind of unrestrained energy. The danger was palpable, throbbing in the air, and yet he danced upon its precipice, laughing at the abyss. I could see the lure in his eyes, a dangerous spark that ignited the very air around him. He was a comet, trailing fire and freedom, but I feared he would burn too bright, too fast. "Marcus!" I shouted, desperation seeping into my voice. "Stop! You don't know what you're doing." But he was already lost in the rapture of the moment, a siren song luring him deeper into oblivion. He raised the goblet, chalice of dreams, glistening with promise, and my heart thudded painfully in my chest. I felt trapped in a loop, a relentless cycle of yearning and fear. Ambrosia was a paradox, a wondrous gift wrapped in the shroud of danger. I wanted to scream, to claw at the ground beneath me, to shake Lila awake from her reverie. "You don't need it," I breathed, words choking me, but they hung in the air, unheeded. She was lost, drifting further into the abyss of her own desire. The moonlight flickered, shadows lengthening, twisting into grotesque shapes that loomed ominously. I felt the weight of something ancient pressing upon us, a truth that whispered through the rustling leaves. Each rustle was a warning, a reminder of the cost, the price of indulgence. Time began to slip, seconds melting away like ice in the sun. I wanted to grasp it, to hold it tight, but it was a ghost slipping through my fingers. "Just one sip, Lila," Marcus urged, his voice a mix of desperation and thrill. "Just one, and you'll see." But I saw. I had seen too much. I had watched the joy drain from the faces of those who succumbed to Ambrosia's allure, leaving only hollow shells behind, echoes of laughter submerged in sorrow. There was beauty in the nectar, a divine artistry, but it concealed the darkness of insatiable cravings, whispering sweet nothings as it gnawed at the soul. "Please," I begged, stepping closer, my heart pounding like a war drum. "Don't make the same mistake. We can find joy without it. We can be free." And then the ground shook beneath us, a tremor of uncertainty that sent shivers racing down my spine. Shadows shifted, swirling with an intensity that felt alive, and in that moment, I was painfully aware of how fragile our existence was. The choice was ours, suspended in the air like a tightrope above an abyss. Lila's face shifted, confusion mingling with desire. "But it's calling to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't ignore it." And I felt the weight of my own choices, my own demons clawing at the edges of my mind. I had danced with the darkness, embraced its thrill, but the aftermath had left me haunted, searching for something real in a world that thrived on illusions. I wanted to pull her back from the edge, to remind her that the true beauty lay not in fleeting pleasures but in the quiet moments, laughter shared under starlit skies, the warmth of friendship, the gentle brush of a hand. "Lila, listen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it resonated with the intensity of my fear. "We are more than this. We are more than fleeting highs. We just have to hold on to each other." But as I spoke, I felt the pull of Ambrosia, the allure wrapping around my own heart, tempting me with the promise of bliss. The shadows danced and flickered, and I understood then, this was a battle, a war between what was real and what was a mirage, a struggle against the siren's call of both ecstasy and despair. In that fractured moment, the world spun, and time stood still, holding its breath as we hovered at the precipice of choice. The air crackled with anticipation, the tension thick enough to choke on. I knew then that we were teetering on the edge of something monumental, a choice that would decide not just our fates, but the very essence of our humanity. "Together," I said, my heart a steady drumbeat against the chaos. "Whatever happens, we face it together." And just as Lila's fingers brushed the goblet, a shiver of understanding passed between us. The moon loomed large, a witness to our fractured resolve, and I could feel the weight of the universe above us, infinitely vast and impossibly close. The paradox of Ambrosia clutched at my throat, a truth both terrifying and exhilarating, a promise that lingered on the edge of realization. Yet the draw remained, the shadows twisted in a dance of temptation, and I knew this was just the beginning. The confrontation was not just with the nectar, but with ourselves, our desires, our fears, and the darkness we dared not face. Time continued its relentless march, the cosmic clock ticking down, and we stood on the brink, heartbeats echoing in the suffocating silence. In that moment, I understood. The Ambrosia was not merely a potion, it was a mirror, a reflection of our deepest desires and our most profound fears. And as I looked into the faces of my friends, I knew the choice loomed before us, as vast and ungraspable as the cosmos itself. Would we leap into the unknown, or would we turn back, clutching our humanity close, knowing that in the paradox of Ambrosia lay the essence of who we truly were? Each heartbeat echoed, and the night stretched on, an endless expanse of uncertainty, a canvas waiting for the brushstrokes of our choices. And as the shadows danced, I could only hope we would find our way home. The wind howled through the crumbling archways of the ancient castle, a ghostly wail that echoed the cries of those long gone. I felt the chill creep beneath my skin, an invasive shiver that stole my breath. Shadows danced in the flickering candlelight, and there, in the middle of the grand hall, two figures stood locked in a silent confrontation, their hearts drumming against the walls of their chests like caged birds desperate for freedom. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of something sweet, something forbidden, lingered like a promise on the tip of my tongue. I remember, her voice quivered, the words spilling out like wine from a broken glass. I remember the feast, the laughter that rang like bells through the night. But what was it, that taste, that transcended all earthly pleasures? Ilara's eye sparkled with a mix of longing and despair, a tempest brewing beneath her fragile exterior. She was not just a girl, she was a vessel for dreams that danced just beyond her reach. Across from her stood Marcus, his brow furrowed, every line on his face telling a story of torment. He had once believed he could capture the essence of that taste, the divine elixir thought to be the food of the gods. It was honey, he breathed, almost reverently, honey mixed with the blood of the earth. The way it flowed, golden and thick, swirling like the sun against a backdrop of twilight. But it was more than just honey. It was the moment I saw the stars reflected in your eyes. The intensity of his gaze pierced through her defenses, raw and unrelenting, even as their memories flickered and faded like dying embers. In that dim light, surrounded by the ghosts of history, they clung to the remnants of a powerful secret, a recipe whispered through generations, passed from trembling lips to eager hands. Ambrosia. The very word felt like a spell, a haunting melody that lured them both deeper into the abyss of their desires. Ilara took a step closer, her heart pounding in time with the whispers of the past. But what if it was more than just food? What if it was a mirror reflecting our souls, our fears, our hopes? The flickering candles cast long shadows, elongating the tension between them as if time itself had suspended in this charged moment. The air thickened, and I could almost taste the bitterness of their unspoken words, a concoction crafted from regret and yearning. Imagine, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper, the fruits of the earth, plucked at the peak of their ripeness, bursting with life. Pomegranates, their seeds glistening like rubies in the sun. Figs, soft and sweet, dripping with the essence of summer heat, each bite a memory of laughter shared beneath the boughs of ancient trees. Ilara's breath caught as she conjured images of lush orchards, of a time when life flowed like honey and laughter echoed through sun-soaked groves. But it's gone now, she said, her voice a fragile wisp. The world has changed. Those flavors, those sensations, they're ghosts, lost in a sea of time. Every heartbeat felt like a drum roll, signaling an impending storm. What if we could bring it back? Marcus's eyes shone with a fierce determination. What if we could taste that ambrosia again? The food that could mend the broken pieces of our hearts. Outside, the wind screamed through the castle, rattling the ancient stones. Distant thunder rumbled as if the heavens themselves were warning them of the weight of their quest. Yet, they stood firm, two souls tethered by the gravity of their dreams and the shadows of their pasts. Ilara, with her haunted eyes, and Marcus, with his unyielding spirit, were caught in a web of longing and desperation. Remember the tales. Ilara pressed, her voice rising above the storm. Those who dared to taste ambrosia were bestowed with immortality, yet cursed to wander the earth forever, never able to return to the warmth of human touch. Her voice wavered with fear, the thrill of discovery tinged with terror. Do we dare to seek that which could change us, bind us to something greater yet isolating? Marcus stepped closer, the air between them electric. I'd carry that burden for a taste of eternity with you, he murmured, each word dripping with sincerity. To feel alive again, to break free from this mundane cycle of existence. What is life without the joy of a fleeting moment, the rush of pure ecstasy that comes from a single bite? As they stood there, the world beyond the castle walls blurred, and the past entwined with the present. The echo of ancient feasts reverberated in their minds, the laughter of nobles, the clinking of goblets, the shimmering bounty of the earth laid before them. The flavors that had inspired myths, that had spurred kings and commoners alike into acts of greatness and folly. I remember, Ilara whispered, her heart drumming against the weight of time. The way the figs tasted, warm and ripe under the sun. How the honey dripped from my fingers, a sweet memory of childhood. Then let us recreate that, Marcus urged, the fervor in his voice rising to a crescendo. Let us find those fruits, those flavors that history has forgotten, and make our own ambrosia. But we must tread carefully. For in every beautiful feast lies the risk of consuming despair. And as they stood on the precipice of discovery, the storm outside raged on, mirroring the turmoil within them. The haunting promise of ambrosia loomed like a ghostly vision, a tantalizing mirage that felt both alluring and ominous. They had yet to taste the truth of it, yet to understand the power it held over their lives and hearts. In the shadows, the echoes of history lingered, reminding them that every flavor carried a story, every harvest a consequence. The past was not merely a whisper but a tangible presence, hovering like a specter over their endeavors. And as they prepared to plunge into the depths of culinary myth, they could not yet see the chains that might bind them, the ghosts that might awaken. With each passing moment, they moved closer to the edge of something beautiful yet terrifying, unaware of how their pursuit would intertwine with the very essence of who they were destined to become. The light flickered, and in that dim glow, they shared a fleeting smile, an unspoken promise sealed with the weight of their dreams. They would seek the ambrosia of the gods, but at what cost? The clock struck midnight, its echoes lingering in the frigid air, shattering the silence of the empty room. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering like the last remnants of a forgotten dream, and in that moment, time became irrelevant. Mark stood at the center, heart racing, the cool touch of the polished marble beneath his fingers grounding him. He could taste the ambrosia on his tongue, sweet and thick like honey, swelling with memories, some enchanting, others grotesque. Tonight, the world would change, it had to. Diana burst through the door, breathless. Her eyes were wide, haunted. "Mark, you have to listen to me," she cried, urgency spilling from her lips. "They're coming." What horrors lay behind that line? He could feel it, a palpable fear, an electric current that thrummed through the room, wrapping around them like a shroud. "I remember," Mark whispered, his voice barely above the shadows. "The stories. The whispers of ambrosia, the nectar of the gods, the elixir that binds us." He was lost in thought, the syrupy sweetness clinging to his memories. But does it bind us together or tear us apart? Diana's fingers trembled, clutching a faded newspaper clipping, ink smudged with time. "It's in the games now, the films. Just when we thought it was gone, a resurgence. But it's different, twisted. It's being used to control, to manipulate." She glanced over her shoulder, as if the very walls had ears. "You're not the only one who remembers." A whisper of wind curled around them, chilling the back of his neck. He could see them, the shadows, lurking, watching. "And what if it's too late?" he asked, dread gripping him. "What if we're just pawns in their game, lost in this cycle of obsession?" The clock chimed again, its sound a warning, a heartbeat in the stillness. Each chime echoed a moment in time, memories of laughter, of joy, of beautiful ambrosia shared among friends, now twisted by the sharp edge of betrayal. It had seeped into the fabric of their lives, woven into the stories they told. Characters from shows they binged, heroes and villains alike, the allure of ambrosia wrapped around their narratives, like a vine around a tree, choking the life out of it. "I remember the first time I saw ambrosia portrayed in that film," Diana continued, her voice quaking. "They made it look so enticing, so beautiful, yet underneath was chaos. A war raged every time someone tasted it, they became consumed, lost to their desires." Tears brimmed in her eyes, a cocktail of fear and anger. "That's what they want. They want us to forget who we are." Mark could feel the weight of her words settle into the marrow of his bones. The spectre of ambrosia was not just an ancient myth, it was reborn, a cultural icon, a siren calling out to the lost souls navigating the fog of existence. "But what if it's not just the films?" he asked, a flicker of desperation igniting in his chest. "What if it's us? What if we're the ones who have forgotten?" A thunderous crash outside pulled them from their reverie, a jolt of adrenaline surging through Mark's veins. "They're here," he breathed, panic punctuating the space between them. "We have to move." He grabbed Diana's hand, the warmth of her skin fighting against the coldness of the night. Together they stumbled through the door, shadows blending into a world that felt like a dream or a nightmare. The streets were alive, pulses of neon light washing over them, the air thick with the scent of popcorn and excitement. Yet, beneath it all, there was an undercurrent, a darkness that gnawed at the edges of their consciousness. Ambrosia was everywhere, in video games flashing across screens, intoxicating stories on the lips of eager fans. Each tale a reflection, each bite of ambrosia a step deeper into the rabbit hole. "Look!" Diana shouted, pointing to a digital billboard. The image flickered, a character with eyes like voids, a smile that promised everything but delivered nothing. Ambrosia dripped from their lips, a shimmering promise of power and pleasure. "They're glorifying it," she cried, despair mixing with fury. "They don't see the consequences." Mark could feel the weight of her passion, an ember igniting in his chest. "But we can't stop them if we don't remember," he said fiercely. "We must reclaim the story, the truth hidden beneath the glimmering facade." Diana stopped, her eyes narrowing. "What truth?" "The truth that connects us to the past," he murmured, the words slipping through his lips like the last strains of a haunting melody. Maybe ambrosia isn't just a drug, it's a mirror to our souls, reflecting our deepest desires, our darkest fears." A shiver danced along his spine as he spoke. What if they could harness that? What if they could turn the shadows into light? But before they could gather their thoughts, the ground trembled underfoot, the very fabric of reality shifting in a chaotic storm. Figures emerged from the dark, eyes shining like obsidian. They were the lost ones, the ones who had succumbed to Ambrosia's call, now nothing but echoes of their former selves. Diana gasped, the reality hitting like a blunt force. "Mark, we have to face them." Tension hung thick in the air, a taut string ready to snap. Together, he breathed, steeling himself against the encroaching darkness. As they stepped forward, the shadows closed in, an embrace both tender and suffocating. Hearts raced, breaths quickened. The world blurred, past and present collided, stories intertwining, the sweet taste of ambrosia lingering on the edge of their consciousness, pulling them in, deeper and deeper into the void. Only then did Mark understand. They were not merely fighting for their lives, they were battling for their souls, against a tide that sought to erase their very existence. The moon hung heavy above them, casting an ethereal glow that illuminated their path, but it was the darkness that lay ahead that held the true answer. Ambrosia was their past, their present, their future. And in that moment, the confrontation was inevitable. The truth lay waiting, a heartbeat away. The air crackled with an intensity that felt almost electric. It was as if the universe held its breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The moon hung low, a silver spectre casting its gaze upon the chaos below, where shadows danced frantically among the ruins of a forgotten city. A scream pierced the silence, raw and desperate, echoing through the crumbling streets. I ran, heart hammering, breath misting in the cold night, feeling the weight of every soul that had come before me, every whisper of the past clawing at my mind. Is this where it ends? My voice trembled, but the darkness swallowed my words whole. I could feel the presence of Ilara beside me, her eyes wide, glimmering with a desperation that mirrored my own. She clutched a vial of amber liquid, the so-called ambrosia, in a hand that shook like a leaf in a storm. "It's supposed to make us immortal," she gasped, as if the very idea could dispel our doubts. Yet, a bitter taste lodged itself in my throat. "Supposed to," I echoed, the ghosts of countless lost souls haunting my words. Ambrosia. The elixir that promised life eternal, a heady brew of ancient secrets, whispered legends, and the very essence of hope. Who wouldn't want to grasp the threads of forever, to resist the pull of time itself? Yet, as I stood on the precipice of the unknown, those fantasies twisted and turned, morphing into something grotesque. Immortality wasn't a gift, it was a curse waiting to unfold. I remember my father's face, weathered by time and regret. "Some things aren't meant for us," he had said, his voice gravelly, as though he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. "We're human, not gods." But in the hollow of my chest, a desire burned brighter than reason, flickering like the last flame in a dying lantern. Ilara's eyes, reflecting both hope and despair, were a mirror to my own struggles, two flawed souls trapped in a cosmic game, desperate to rewrite fate. "Is it worth it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if we're not meant to touch the stars?" Ilara turned to me, her face a canvas of uncertainty, vulnerability etched in the lines of her brow. What if we are? Her voice, a fragile thread, pulled me closer to the edge of my own beliefs. I could hear the heartbeat of the city around us, an ancient pulse, thrumming with stories of those who had reached for eternity and found only emptiness. The night deepened, shadows stretching into grotesque shapes, taunting us with the memories of those who had succumbed to the allure of immortality before us. I could almost taste their longing, their despair, a bittersweet concoction that mingled with the air we breathed. We were standing on the grave of ambition, surrounded by echoes of laughter that had turned to cries. It made the weight of Ilara's vial seem heavier, laden with a gravity that threatened to pull us into oblivion. Do you remember the first time we spoke about it? Ilara's voice cut through the thickening fog of dread. I nodded, the memory flooding back, a late-night conversation under the stars, the world feeling infinite, our dreams intertwined like the constellations above. I thought it was just a story, I admitted, feeling the warmth of that moment fade into the chill of reality. A fairy tale spun by desperate hearts. But it's real, she insisted, desperation clawing at her. It has to be real. I could see the flicker of hope in her eyes, a stubborn flame against the encroaching darkness. The world around us seemed to blur, the ruins turning to shadows, the whispers of the past growing louder, drowning out the screams of the present. The clock ticked relentlessly, a reminder that time was a thief, stealing moments we could never reclaim. But what if, just what if, this vial held the key to something greater? The chemistry of immortality, they said, it was in the ingredients, the elements drawn from the earth itself, each one a piece of a grander puzzle. I could almost see the symbols dancing in my mind, the elements swirling in a cosmic ballet, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, the building blocks of existence, and yet, so much more than that. Can you feel it? Ilara whispered, her voice trembling as she raised the vial toward the moonlight. The liquid shimmered, a promise contained within glass. Can you feel the pull? I could, a magnetic force beckoning me closer, igniting my deepest fears and desires. In that moment, the night was alive, pulsating with potential. The ghosts of the past swirled around us, and I felt their breath on my neck, their whispered warnings mixing with our hopes. Ilara, we need to decide, I said, my voice a strained thread connecting us. Do we dare? Do we risk everything for a taste of eternity? Her eyes searched mine, and I saw the flicker of doubt, a tempest of emotion behind her gaze. I can't go back, she said, and I understood the truth behind those words. The abyss of mortality loomed behind us, ready to pull us under the moment we turned away. The air thickened with tension, the shadows closing in, and the city seemed to lean in, as if waiting for our choice. I stepped closer, drawn to the shimmering vial, the promise of life that felt like a siren's call. Together. I breathed. Ilara nodded, resolve pooling in her eyes, a glimmer of something fierce and unyielding, an echo of the dreams we had spun beneath the stars. And as we stood there, on the brink of eternity, the darkness whispered its secrets, wrapping around us like a shroud, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. In that moment, I could see our futures stretching into infinity, chaos and beauty intertwined, spiraling out like the cosmos above us. Together, we vowed, as the world blurred, time slipping through our fingers like sand. The night pressed on, relentless and unyielding, a clock ticking toward the unknown, where life and death danced hand in hand, and the weight of our choice hung heavy in the air, waiting to be ignited. The moon hung low, heavy and swollen, like a bruise on the darkened sky. In the silence of the night, as shadows crept through the tangled trees, a scream shattered the stillness, raw, desperate, a plea for salvation. I stumbled through the underbrush, heart pounding like a war drum, blood rushing in my ears. I could barely breathe, couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a weight pressing down on my chest that made each step more labored than the last. Rear. It was Marcus, his voice laced with panic, echoing through the dense fog that seemed to wrap around us like a shroud. He was cradling her, my sister, her body limp, eyes glazed over as if she were caught between two worlds. Help me. She ate it. She ate the ambrosia. My heart sank, ambrosia, the nectar of the gods, the sweet promise of immortality. But it was also a curse, a shimmering facade hiding the raw, festering truth beneath. I could see the gleam of it on her lips, the remnants of a meal that should have been forbidden, the kind of food that could twist fate and ignite madness. "Rhea, stay with us!" I shouted, panic tightening my throat. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent, and every breath she took was a struggle, a battle against the very thing that had promised her eternity. My mind raced, torn between the desire to shake her awake and the gnawing fear that perhaps it was already too late. In that moment, I remembered the stories, the warnings whispered like dark secrets through generations, tales that spoke of those who tasted the divine and paid the price. Ambrosia was said to offer immortality, yet what lay beneath its golden glow? What price did we pay for a single taste? I could hear the echoes of ancient voices, the laughter of gods, and the cries of mortals who had succumbed to the siren call of forbidden fruit. "Marcus, listen to me!" I gripped his arm, desperation clawing at my insides. "She needs to spit it out. We can't let her keep it down. It's poison disguised as paradise." His eyes, wide and frantic, darted to Rhea, to me, as if he was caught between two worlds, one where we fought for her life, and another where the allure of immortality could snatch her away forever. "But it's Ambrosia. It's supposed to be good." "Good?" I spat, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "Good is a lie. It's a trap. You think the gods care about us? About our lives? They give us gifts that burn, gifts that tear us apart. Rhea is slipping, don't you see?" She writhed in his arms, a fleeting shadow of the sister I once knew. I could see it, the sparkle of life fading, the sweet taste of ambrosia turning rancid on her tongue. The air crackled with tension, the trees around us whispering warnings, leaves trembling in the wind like the uneven breath of an anxious child. I could almost hear them, foolish mortals, claiming divinity when you've barely grasped humanity. "Rhea," I cooed, kneeling beside her, holding her head in my lap, palm against her clammy forehead. "Please, just listen to me. You have to fight. You have to fight this." Her eyes fluttered open, momentarily meeting mine, a fleeting connection, a flicker of understanding. I could see the struggle within her, the war between the seductive promise of forever and the stark reality of her frail humanity. I caught the glint of fear hiding behind her bravado, the ache of knowing that immortality was just a fancy word for unending suffering. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling, "don't let the gods win. Don't let them take you from us. You are so much more than this, so much more than a meal fit for legends." As if summoned by my words, shadows began to close in, thick and suffocating, swirling like smoke around us. I could see them now, the phantoms of those who had tasted the divine and been consumed by it. Their faces twisted in agony, their mouths eternally open in silent screams, a haunting reminder of what lay ahead if Rhea surrendered. "Make it stop," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper, the warmth slipping from her body like grains of sand through clenched fingers. The weight of the world pressed upon me, the weight of our shared history, the laughter, the tears, the moments that stitched us together like a tattered quilt. "You have to choose, Rhea. Choose life. Choose us." Marcus's hands trembled, cradling her as if she were the very essence of what it meant to be alive. "What if," he began, voice cracking, "what if she's destined for something more? What if this is our chance? Destined." I laughed, an empty sound that echoed in the stillness. "Destined to suffer? To be lost in the clutches of something insatiable? This is not a gift, this is a curse." The air thickened, anticipation coiling around us like a serpent ready to strike, and then, like a bulb igniting in the darkness, Rhea's eyes flared with a flicker of rebellion. "No," she whispered, determination cracking through the veil of despair. "I won't let them take me. I'm not theirs to claim." With every ounce of strength, she forced herself to sit up, mouth opening, the remnants of ambrosia pooling at the corners of her lips. "I will not be a pawn in their game," she spat, the taste of the gods nauseating her. "Rhea, no!" Marcus shouted, horror flooding his voice, but it was too late. She wrenched herself free, retching violently, the sweet poison spilling onto the ground like shattered dreams. The shadows recoiled, wailing in fury, the forest alive with their screams. I felt the pulse of life surge around us, the wind howling in protest, as if even nature itself was torn between the betrayal of the gods and the triumph of our humanity. "Rhea!" I cried, grasping her shoulders, heart racing. "You did it. You chose life." Yet, even as I rejoiced, the lingering question hung in the air, the haunting spectre of what we had narrowly escaped. Behind us, the shadows twisted and writhed, their hunger unsated, their whispers now a sinister promise echoing through time. "You may have won today, but our gaze is eternal. You will know our hunger." As the moon hung there, unblinking, I felt a chill seep through my bones, a premonition of darkness that lingered like a ghost. We had survived tonight, but the battle against eternity was far from over. The city was a cacophony of shadows, a labyrinth of screaming sirens and flickering neon lights, each flicker a heartbeat in the staccato rhythm of life. And there she was, MIA, arms trembling, her breath shallow, as she stood in the middle of that deafening chaos, holding the vial that promised eternity. Ambrosia, they called it. She could feel its weight like a stone in her palm, cold and unforgiving. The scent of copper hung heavily in the air, a reminder of sacrifices made, lives lost. I can't do this," MIA whispered, her heart racing, a wild drumbeat in her chest, threatening to escape her ribcage. The world spun like a fever dream, blurring the outlines of people who passed her by, oblivious to the war raging inside her. She looked up, searching for a flicker of understanding in a sea of indifferent faces. But all she found was the reflection of her own fear, a ghost staring back at her in the glass of a nearby storefront. Beside her, Lucas stepped in closer, his voice a low growl. "You have to, MIA. You don't want to die like the rest of them." His dark eyes pierced through the chaos, filled with a desperation that mirrored her own. He was a whirlwind of contradictions, fierce yet vulnerable, a man whose laughter could shatter glass, yet whose heart was a fragile thing, teetering on the edge of despair. Just last week, she had watched him lose his mother, the last thread of his family unraveling into dust. "I remember when we thought we'd beat this," MIA murmured, her fingers brushing the vial's surface, the glass cool against her skin. "Remember the park? The way the sun felt? We were invincible. We were young." The memory hit her hard, a tear slipping down her cheek, a single drop of regret. "Memories don't save you," he said, fierce and raw, like a wound exposed to the air. "We're living on borrowed time, MIA. It's a ticking clock, and you know it." He grasped her wrist, urgency in his grip, the warmth of his hand seeping into her skin, reminding her of the humanity they clung to in this cold world. The city's pulse quickened around them, a haunting dance of life and death. She could feel it in her bones, the urgency, the desperation of those around her, all seeking the same thing, salvation from the relentless passage of time. Shadows flickered past them, faces marred by fear, longing. They were ghosts living in a world that held no promise of forever. "Lucas, what if it's not what they say it is? What if Ambrosia is a lie?" Her voice trembled, uncertainty clawing at her throat. "What if we're selling our souls for a shadow?" She could feel the cold grip of doubt tightening around her heart, a relentless coil of anxiety and hope intertwined. His laughter was sharp, the sound cutting through the tension like a blade. "You think I haven't wondered that? But look at us. Look at what we have left. We're running out of time." He stepped back, letting her breathe, his own struggle visible in the tight lines of his jaw, the way his hands clenched into fists. Above them, the sky was bruising, stars flickering like dying embers, each one a reminder of lost moments. The urgency of life surged through MIA, pulling her closer to the edge of a decision that felt both toxic and intoxicating. "What if I don't want to live forever?" she asked, voice barely a whisper, as if saying the words could summon the truth she feared. "What if eternity is just a prison?" Lucas stepped forward, his breath hot against her ear. "What's worse, MIA? To fade away into nothing, or to fight for a chance at something more? Remember those late nights? The dreams we had?" His voice cracked, a raw edge of desperation. "I'd rather chase shadows than succumb to the dark. I'd rather believe in something, anything." She could feel the weight of his pain, the essence of his desire, and it echoed in her own heart. "I remember," she whispered, the memories flooding her mind like a river overflowing its banks, laughter spilling into the night, dreams painted across the canvas of their youth, hope wrapped in shimmering threads of possibility. But that night was different. The air was electric, charged with the weight of their choices, and Mia knew they were standing on a precipice. She felt it in the marrow of her bones, the chilling realization that immortality was a seductive trap, a lure to pull them deeper into a darkness they couldn't quite name. And as she stood there, heart pounding, the vial shimmering in her palm, she saw the shadows sharpen around them, the faces of those they had lost, the lives snuffed out, reminders of the cost of desire. They were not just chasing eternity, they were haunting themselves, each step forward a dance with ghosts. Lucas, she gasped, the walls of her heart crashing down, her resolve wavering. What if we're just running from the inevitable? In that moment, the world around them seemed to hold its breath, the city silencing its rage, as if time itself had paused to listen. And it was in that eerie stillness that Mia understood, life, in all its fragility, was worth living, even if it meant facing the darkness, even if it meant letting go. Before she could voice her revelation, the ground beneath them quaked, a reminder that nothing, not even their choices, was ever permanent. The sirens wailed again, a mournful echo that resonated within her, and she knew they were at the edge of a cliff. Together? Lucas asked, eyes burning with a mix of hope and fear, a question that trembled in the air between them. She looked into his eyes, the storm of emotion swirling in the depths, and in that charged moment, the weight of their shared humanity anchored her. Together, she echoed, the word a lifeline in the dark. And as they stood, poised on the brink of the unknown, the city around them buzzed back to life. In that moment of connection, they realized they were not merely seeking immortality. They were living, breathing, imperfectly human. With a shared understanding, they turned toward the future, hearts pounding in unison. In the chaos of the city, they embraced their fragile existence, knowing that as long as they chose to live, every fleeting moment held the promise of eternity. The air crackled with the scent of ambrosia, heady and intoxicating, a bittersweet perfume that hung like a ghost in the dimly lit studio. I stood frozen, the world around me dissolving into a blur of colors, shapes, and whispers. My heart thumped against my ribs like a desperate prisoner. The canvas before me, a blank, yawning void, seemed to pulse in time with my racing pulse. I could hear the echoes of history in the silence, the desperate cries of artists and musicians long gone, each one seeking the divine spark that Ambrosia promised, yet always eluded. In the corner, Clara scratched furiously at her violin, each note a cry of anguish. She poured her soul into the strings, a torrent of longing and despair that seeped through the very walls, curling around my heart like a vine. I remembered when she first played for me, her fingers trembling, a raw innocence painted against her haunted gaze. But Ambrosia had changed her, twisted her joy into something darker. It was as if the nectar of the gods had become a parasite, feeding on her despair. Each melody she conjured now dripped with melancholy, stirring memories of love lost and dreams shattered. "Can you feel it?" she rasped, her voice a mere thread of desperation. "It calls to us, you know? The beauty, the anguish. It's all tangled together." I wanted to scream, to tell her that the beauty was slipping away, that we were drowning. But instead, I nodded, a terrible weight settling in my chest. And then there was Marcus, the sculptor. His hands were stained with clay, fingers clawed like the roots of a twisted tree. He worked in silence, a frenzy of motion that felt both desperate and futile. In the shadows, he whispered to his creations, as if they held secrets worth dying for. I watched him, awe and fear mingling within me. Could he hear the voices too? The echoes of those who had partaken and paid with their souls? I remembered the day he told me about the first time he tasted ambrosia, his eyes lit with a manic spark, as if he had touched the face of the cosmos itself. I created a masterpiece, he had said, voice trembling with excitement. But it took something from me, something I can't get back. His laughter hung heavy in the air, a sound that felt like glass shattering, sharp and cutting. The art that flowed from his hands was breathtaking, a divine play of shadows and light, but it came at a price. Every sculpture seemed to cry out, holding within its form the weight of his sacrifices. I could feel the tension crackling between us, like the space before a storm. Clara's music crescendoed, a wild symphony of passion and pain, and Marcus responded, molding his clay with fervor, sweat streaming down his brow. But that same passion burned through me like fire, igniting memories of nights spent in ecstasy and sorrow alike, moments where the universe felt tangible, where Ambrosia became the bridge between our dreams and our nightmares. I remember, I whispered, the words slipping from my lips. The way it tasted, the rush that stole my breath. I remember, Clara echoed, her bow hovering mid-air, eyes glazed as if lost in time. The light it brought, but also the shadows that followed. And there it was, the truth hiding in the corners of our minds. Ambrosia beckoned like a siren, sweet and treacherous, gifting us moments of brilliance only to strip away our sanity, leaving us clawing at the edges of reality. The music swelled, wrapping around us like a warm embrace, then thrusting us into a chilling abyss, a reminder that beauty was fleeting, as fragile as the morning dew. We were creators, yes, but we were also haunted souls, wandering through a labyrinth of our own making, each brushstroke, each note a desperate plea for salvation. The irony twisted in my gut, we sought to immortalize our pain, yet in doing so, we etched our own doom into every masterpiece. Do you think the gods suffer? Marcus asked suddenly, his voice low but charged with an urgency that made my skin prickle. Do they bleed like we do? Do they drown in the beauty they create? The question hung in the air, a heavy fog obscuring the truth. I wanted to tell him that the gods were just as lost, that they too were victims of their own whims. But the words tangled in my throat like barbed wire, dangerous and raw. I remembered stories, ancient tales of artists driven mad by ambition, of musicians who danced with the devil for a fleeting whisper of inspiration. The shadows grew longer, dark tendrils creeping into the edges of our sanctuary. Clara's bow sang a lament, a haunting melody that felt like a warning. I wanted to run, to escape the grip of ambrosia that feasted on our souls, but my feet remained rooted to the floor. The air thickened, heavy with the weight of our decisions. We're losing ourselves, I finally managed, the word spilling out like a dam breaking. We're becoming the very ghosts we sought to escape. Marcus paused, the silence between us stretching like the yawning void of an abyss. Clara's music faltered, a single note hanging painfully in the air, unresolved. In that moment, the tension cracked like ice beneath our feet, and I could see the flickers of doubt dancing in their eyes. But Ambrosia called to us, luring us further into its embrace, whispering promises of greatness and glory, the allure of the divine. We were artists, creators, but at what cost? The answer lingered just out of reach, a haunting spectre hovering in the shadows. And as the night deepened around us, the world outside faded into a distant memory, each heartbeat echoing the truth we were too afraid to confront. The music swelled once more, an anguished cry that spiraled into the cosmos, a prayer or a curse, perhaps both. Each note pulled us deeper, weaving a tapestry of beauty and despair, drawing the curtain on our fate. Would we rise, transformed by the nectar of the gods, or would we crumble under its weight, lost to the whispers of our own creation? The answer shimmered like a mirage, tantalizingly close, yet forever out of reach. The air crackled with a tension that reminded me of thunder just before a storm. The flickering torches cast long shadows across the gathering, twisting and turning like restless spirits longing to escape. I could hear the shuffling of feet, the hushed whispers of eager anticipation laced with fear. My heart raced, each beat a relentless drum echoing in my ears. I stood on the precipice of something monumental, a ritual that would either bind us together or tear us apart. The scent of ambrosia lingered, thick and sweet, like a promise wrapped in the heavy cloak of mystery. Alizia stood to my left, her hands trembling as she clutched a small vessel filled with the golden essence. This wasn't just any gathering, it was a reckoning. Her eyes, usually so bright, were clouded with doubt and desperation. I remember the nights we'd spent laughing under the stars, weaving dreams together like children playing with threads of sunlight. But now, as the ritual loomed, those dreams lay shattered at our feet, replaced by the weight of betrayal and longing. Do you think it will change anything?" she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the thickening air. I couldn't answer. I didn't know if ambrosia could mend what was broken. It was said to be the nectar of the gods, capable of transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary, but at what cost? I swallowed hard, feeling the knot in my throat tighten. Next to Alizia, Riven stood, his jaw set, a storm brewing behind his steely gaze. He had always been the one to hold the line between sanity and chaos. His fingers twitched, itching to reach for the vessel, to pour our hopes into the flames and watch them ignite. But he hesitated, as if the very act would shatter the fragile world we had built. Ambrosia is not just a drink, Riven finally said, his voice low but heavy with urgency. It's a catalyst. It reveals truth, and truth is a double-edged sword. His eyes flickered to Alizia, and I felt the air grow colder. There it was, the unspoken betrayal, like a ghost lingering just out of sight, haunting our every move. Alizia's breath caught in her throat. She knew, as did I, that the Ambrosia might expose the darkness we had buried deep within our hearts. The circle of people surrounding us began to hum, a low resonance that stirred the very ground beneath our feet. Each note climbed higher, blending into a haunting melody that wrapped around us, pulling us closer to the center of this ancient rite. It was intoxicating, the air thickening with tension and the sweet scent of the ambrosia. I could feel its weight pressing down on me, pushing against my chest, demanding to be tasted. But would it be a gift or a curse? I turned to Alizia, searching her expression for any flicker of reassurance. Her eyes, bright as stars, reflected 1,000 unsaid words. I wanted to tell her that we could still salvage this, whatever this was. But the truth coiled around us like a serpent, its fangs poised to strike. "Do you remember that night?" I asked, my voice raw with nostalgia. "When we carved our names into the old oak tree. You said we were bound together, like the roots growing deep into the earth." "I remember," she whispered, her gaze falling away. "But roots can also strangle. They can choke the life out of each other." Her words stung, a reminder of the fragility of connection. The hum of the crowd rose to a crescendo, and I felt a shift in the atmosphere. Something ancient stirred, alive and watching. The shadows twisted even more, echoing the uncertainties in my heart, teetering on the brink of revelation. "Now, we drink," Riven declared, his voice booming, slicing through the mounting tension. He raised the vessel high, the ambrosia shimmering like liquid gold in the firelight. "We drink to bind us, or to burn us." The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide and hungry. This was not merely a ritual, it was a gamble, a dance with fate. I could feel the pulse of the crowd, a heartbeat of 1,000 souls, each one yearning for connection, for truth, for release. I could almost taste the ambrosia on my tongue, its sweetness mingling with the bitterness of dread swirling in my stomach. Alizia reached out, her fingers brushing against mine, a lifeline in the tempest of emotions. "Whatever happens, I'm with you," she said, her voice firm. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed the tremors of uncertainty. Would this moment solidify our bond or tear us apart? Riven poured the ambrosia into small cups, the liquid gleaming like the last rays of sunlight before twilight swallowed the world. The ritual demanded our offering, secrets, fears, and desires. With each drop of ambrosia, we surrendered pieces of ourselves, exposing our souls to the light, to judgment, and to potential destruction. As the first cup was raised, I felt the weight of anticipation. The crowd inhaled collectively, a breath held tight in the chest of the universe. I could sense the moment stretching, warping, every heartbeat an eternity. Shadows danced, swirling like memories lost in time, whispering promises and threats in equal measure. I remember the first sip, the ambrosia warm against my lips, a sweetness that belied the darkness lurking beneath. As it coursed through me, I felt it ignite something deep within, my fears, my longings, my anger bubbling to the surface. I became acutely aware of the truth I had hidden, the betrayal that threatened to consume us all. And then, the explosion came. A voice rose above the hum, a revelation that shattered the silence, raw and fierce. Secrets bared, hearts exposed, the air thick with the weight of confessions. Alizia gasped, Riven stilled, and the crowd erupted into chaos, a symphony of anguish and revelation playing out beneath the stars. I stood on the precipice of chaos, the ambrosia coursing through my veins, and I realized I had not just consumed a drink but opened a door to our very souls. Would we embrace the darkness within, or would we let it consume us whole? Just as the crescendo of emotions reached its peak, the world tilted on its axis. The shadows lengthened, and the air crackled with the promise of what was yet to come. I was caught in the ebb and flow of this ritual, a conduit for the past and the future, suspended between love and betrayal as the night deepened and the dawn lay waiting just beyond the horizon. The clock struck midnight, a hollow sound echoing through the empty hallways of the old mansion, where shadows danced like restless spirits. A flickering candle cast a trembling light, revealing the face of Jonathan, his eyes wide and haunted. He stood at the crumbling window, staring into the abyss of an endless night. The weight of centuries pressed down on him, a shroud of unfulfilled longing. He could hear them whispering, the ghosts of dreams not yet realized, their voices curling, coiling around his heart. "What have I done?" he murmured, the question hanging in the air like a noose. Behind him, Clara rushed in, breathless. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes alight with manic urgency. "We can't stop now. We're on the brink of something extraordinary," she exclaimed, but her voice trembled, a discordant note in the symphony of desperation that filled the room. She caught Jonathan's gaze, and for a moment, time bent, folding in upon itself, a cruel reminder of the mortality they both sought to defy. She could sense it now, the chill creeping in, the whisper of doubt. "Do you remember the vision? The promise of forever?" Jonathan turned, and there was a flicker of fear in those once certain eyes. "What if forever is just a cage?" he whispered, voicing the unspoken dread that clawed at their minds. He recalled the night they first stumbled upon the ancient text, its fraying edges, the way it seemed to hum with forbidden knowledge. They had laughed then, intoxicated by dreams of endless life, imagining the world as their playground. But laughter had morphed into obsession, and obsession had twisted into something darker, more insidious. I remember, Clara's voice broke, an echoing chant that reminded him of their shared nights, sleepless, consumed by thoughts of transcendence. She had envisioned a life where they would never age, where death was but a fleeting rumor, a distant echo of a world they could conquer. But now, grappling with the shadows, those desires felt like a cruel joke. "What happened to us?" She searched his face, seeking answers that were buried deep, hidden beneath the layers of their ambition. "I thought we were building something beautiful," Jonathan said, his voice cracking like glass. The illusion had shattered, their dreams lay in shards around them. "And now?" He gestured toward the window, where the stars blinked back, 1,000 indifferent eyes watching their unraveling. "Now I see only the darkness." Clara stepped closer, her breath hitching. "We can't turn back. Not when we are so close." She was desperate, clinging to the edge of sanity. "You feel it too, don't you? The pull of eternity." He felt it, like a siren's call, sweet yet suffocating. But beneath that allure lay the dread of what a life without end truly meant. Eternity could become a prison, time stretching into a twisted infinity. "What if we lose ourselves in this pursuit?" he asked, the vulnerability spilling out like a wound laid bare. "What if we become ghosts in our own lives?" The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken truths. Clara's eyes glimmered with tears, and the flicker of candlelight caught her face, revealing the cracks in her resolve. "I can't bear the thought of fading away," she confessed, the weight of the world pressing down on her fragile shoulders. "Every day I see it, every wrinkle, every grey hair. We were meant for more than this cruel cycle of life and death." Jonathan's heart ached at her pain. He reached out, took her trembling hands in his, feeling both the warmth of life and the chill of the unknown. "But at what cost, Clara? What if our quest for immortality leads to madness? What if we lose what it means to truly live, to love?" A shudder passed through her, a flicker of doubt igniting in her eyes. "You're scared," she whispered, the realization striking them both like a thunderclap. "You're scared of what we might become." "Yes," he admitted, the truth spilling from his lips. "I am terrified." They stood there, locked in a moment that felt like an eternity, a painful reflection of their crumbling hopes. Outside, the wind howled, a mournful sound that echoed their despair. The mansion felt alive, each creak and groan a reminder of the past they could not escape. Time was a relentless predator, circling them, waiting for the right moment to pounce and consume them whole. I can't let go, Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. The world is so vast, so beautiful. How can I let it slip away? Jonathan's heart twisted. He longed to tell her to step back, to breathe, to embrace the fleeting beauty of life. But how could he when he too was ensnared in the web of desire? What if we could find peace in our fragility, he suggested, his voice almost pleading. What if we let ourselves be human? The words hung between them, heavy and charged, the weight of 1,000 unshed tears drenching the air. Clara's breath hitched again, a flicker of horror crossing her features. Are you saying we should accept our fate? Just fade away? No, he said urgently, grasping her hands tighter. I'm saying we should embrace our moments, every heartbeat, every laugh, every tear. We can make our lives meaningful without chasing an endless void. The clock ticked on, each second a reminder of their failing grasp on time. Shadows stretched and twisted in the corners, growing restless as if longing to break free. But what if we try and fail? Clara whispered, the fear pooling in her chest like a dark, suffocating fog. What if we try and succeed? Jonathan countered, an ember of hope igniting within him. What if we find joy in the now? In that dim room, the air thick with tension, two souls stood at a precipice, teetering between the allure of forever and the stark reality of mortality. As the candle flickered once more, illuminating their haunted faces, they were forced to confront the haunting truth: the pursuit of immortality could either be their salvation or their undoing. Clara took a shaky breath, the lines of her resolve wavering like the flame's glow. Then let's find out, she breathed, taking a step closer, her heart pounding like the relentless drum of time. And so, as the clock struck again, echoing through the empty halls, an unbreakable bond formed in the shadows, tethering them to both the beauty and horror of existence, entwining their fates in a journey that had only just begun. The air crackles with tension, thick and electric, every breath feels like a promise, or a curse. I stand there, pulse racing, as the holographic display glimmers before me, a cascade of data and images that flicker like the ghosts of lives never lived. A child screams somewhere in the distance, echoes bouncing off the cold, metallic walls of the lab, as I clutch my chest, feeling the weight of decision settle heavily on my heart. This is it. This is where hope meets madness. I remember the first time I saw Evelyn's face. It was illuminated by the glow of a dying star, her laughter like a siren song that beckoned me into the depths of something beautiful and terrifying. She was vibrant, alive, a heartbeat in the chaos. But that was before the experiment. Before we thought we could cheat time. Are you sure about this? Ben's voice cuts through my reverie, a low murmur that vibrates with unspoken fears. His eyes, dark and clouded with doubt, bore into me. I remember how many times I had assured him that this was the future, our future. Yet now, with the weight of the decision looming over me, a chill runs down my spine. How many lives would we gamble for a taste of eternity? What if it goes wrong, he asks, and I can see the flicker of his own memories, times where we miscalculated, times where we lost everything. I can almost hear the clock ticking, a sinister reminder of the fragility of our existence. What if it goes right? I counter, a fire igniting within me. I can feel my heart thrumming with desperation, echoing the hope I had once felt. We had lived through a world where death hung over us like a guillotine, sharp and merciless. We had created Ambrosia, not just as a serum, but as a symbol of rebellion against the inevitable. The lab is filled with the smell of antiseptic and something else, something earthy and suffocating, like the decay of dreams. I glance toward the containment chamber, where the vials of Ambrosia shimmer like liquid gold, promising life, yet offering a ghostly whisper of what it truly means to exist. I can see Evelyn's reflection in the glass, her eyes wide with yearning. "You're not afraid, are you?" she had asked me once, her voice laced with the sweetness of innocence. But fear clings to us like a shroud now, as we stand on the precipice of an unknown fate. The shadows dance across the walls, and I find myself lost in their chaotic rhythm. This is not just about extending life, it's about redefining what it means to live. Does immortality come with a price, and if so, what are we willing to pay? The second stretch, taut as a bowstring, as Ben's gaze locks onto mine. Evelyn wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want to live if it meant losing herself. His voice trembles with an intensity that pierces the veil of my resolve. I remember the last time I saw her, her frail body, fragile as glass, and the way she smiled through the pain, a haunting memory that wraps around my heart like a vice. You don't know that, I shoot back, desperation clawing at my throat. But I do know. I remember her fear of becoming a mere echo of herself, of losing the essence of who she was. The idea of Ambrosia had been a lifeline, but now it felt like a noose tightening around our necks. Each heartbeat reverberates with the stakes of our choices. We could become gods, or we could become monsters. The lab hums with an energy that feels almost sentient, as if it knows what we're about to do. I step closer to the display, fingers hovering over the controls. The decision hangs heavy in the air, each moment stretching into infinity, each breath crackling with the electricity of unresolved choices. I can feel the weight of history pressing down, the ghosts of those who came before us whispering warnings. Is this what she would have wanted? Ben's voice quivers. To live forever in this darkness. His words pierce through me, raw and unrelenting, and I feel my resolve shatter like glass. What if she could be here, with us? I whisper, a plea more than a question. I can almost see her smile, the light in her eyes sparking like a fire ignited. What if we could bring her back? The idea, once a flicker of hope, now looms like a spectre, haunting and tormenting. Bring her back. Ben scoffs, anger flaring in his chest, a flame against my doubts. You think we can just reverse death like flipping a switch? We've seen what happens when we play with forces we don't understand. Silence falls heavy as I recall the faces of those who had suffered, those who had slipped through fingers like grains of sand, lost to time. I remember the way death had wrapped its fingers around my heart, squeezing until I could no longer breathe. And now, here we are, standing on the edge of a chasm, as the future looms like a dark cloud overhead, promising a storm. I grip the console tighter, knuckles white as I fight a battle against my own heart. But what if we could save others? What if this is our chance to change everything? The words tumble from my lips, a desperate cry against the cacophony of doubt. Or to destroy everything, Ben shoots back, voice low and menacing, his eyes narrowing, filled with a mix of fear and fury. We are not meant to play gods, not when we can barely keep ourselves alive. I remember the love we had forged in the fires of despair, the relentless pursuit of something greater. I have to try, I whisper, a promise made to a ghost. But as I gaze into the dark abyss of the future, I realize that sometimes, the question isn't just about our capacity to live forever, it's about the cost of eternity. The shadows elongate, swallowing the light as my heart races in tandem with the ticking clock. We stand at the brink, grappling with the weight of our choices, our desires, our fears. The line between salvation and damnation blurs, as we inch closer to a decision that could shatter our reality or redefine it. Time slips away like sand, the clock's hands whispering secrets of what could be, or what should have never been. And in that moment, we are suspended, caught between a past we can never change, and a future we have yet to comprehend. As I prepare to make the choice that could alter the fabric of existence itself, I can't help but wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, immortality isn't about living forever, but about learning to embrace the fleeting moments we already have. The night air clung to her skin like a shroud, thick and suffocating, as Mara stood in the flickering shadow of the old oak tree. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale a whispered prayer to a silent universe that offered no solace. The moonlight spilled down like spilled ink, pooling around her feet, while the distant wail of sirens echoed through the empty streets. A storm brewed inside her, a tempest of grief and longing, as she clutched the silver locket hanging from her neck, its cool metal a bitter reminder of what she had lost. I remember, she began, her voice trembling, the moment he first told me about Ambrosia. Elias had been charismatic, full of wild stories that danced on the edge of reality. She could still see the way his eyes sparkled with mischief, how he leaned closer, revealing secrets that only the gods should know. Food of the gods, he had said, the nectar that grants immortality. His laughter had echoed through the rooms of her memory, a haunting melody that now twisted like a knife in her gut. But immortality came at a cost, and now the price seemed insurmountable. Mara thought of her brother, his face pale and gaunt, lying in that sterile hospital bed, fighting a battle no one could win. "You'll see," she whispered to him, "I'll find it. I'll bring you back." She had always been a dreamer, chasing myths like shadows. The whispers of Ambrosia, the tales of eternal feasts and endless days, had filled her nights with longing. Little did she know, the quest for the divine could lead to the darkest corners of her heart. "Do you remember, Elias?" The wind rustled through the leaves, an echo of their shared laughter. "You said it was just a myth, but myths can bleed into reality, can't they?" A flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure emerged from the darkness, Liam, her childhood friend, his features hardened by the years, yet his eyes still held that familiar spark. The weight of loss hung heavy between them, palpable and aching. He stepped closer, the heaviness of his presence both comforting and unknowable. "Mara," he said, his voice low, as if afraid to disturb the fragile night. "You can't chase ghosts." "I'm not chasing ghosts," she shot back, the sharpness of her tone betraying her desperation. "I'm chasing hope." Liam shook his head, the shadows deepening around him. "Hope? Or despair? There's a fine line, you know." "I remember," she murmured, her eyes welling with unshed tears, "when we used to believe we could conquer anything. That the world was an endless tapestry of possibilities." "Belief is a dangerous thing," he replied, his gaze piercing through the darkness. "It can lead you to beautiful places or break you apart." The weight of their shared past pressed down on them, memories mingling with the night, a dance of laughter and love, a swirl of youthful dreams now tarnished by the starkness of reality. But Mara was not ready to surrender. "I can't let him go," she pleaded, her words spilling out like blood from an open wound. "If Ambrosia exists, I'll find it. I can't lose him, Liam." "Not like this." Silence wrapped around them, a fragile cocoon filled with unspoken fears and wild hopes. The clock ticked somewhere in the distance, each second a reminder of life slipping away. "Do you think it's real?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his stoic facade. "Ambrosia? Or the idea of it?" She paused, feeling the weight of his gaze. "Maybe both." Mara turned her eyes to the star-studded sky, where the cosmos stretched on endlessly, a tapestry of light and darkness. "We're all just trying to find our place in this vast universe, aren't we? To believe that we matter, that love can transcend even death." "Love," he echoed, a bittersweet smile curling on his lips. "It's both a blessing and a burden." That night, as they stood beneath the sprawling branches of the old oak, they shared stories, the light-hearted and the painful, the beautiful and the grotesque. Each word was a step into the abyss, pulling them closer to a confrontation they both feared yet craved. "I remember," Mara's voice quivered, "when we tasted the sweetness of life without fear." Liam stepped closer, the space between them charged with electricity. "But what happens when that sweetness turns sour? When the taste of hope becomes a poison?" A shiver raced down her spine, and she felt the shadows creeping in, reminding her of the fragility of existence. "We fight," she breathed, "we fight until our last breath. Because if Ambrosia teaches us anything, it's that life is fleeting but worth every moment." In that instant, a haunting realization settled over them like a thick fog. They were both flawed beings, tethered by the weight of their choices, yearning for something that felt just beyond their grasp. The battle against the inevitable was a shared torment, and as they stood together, the bond forged through their pain was palpable and unbreakable. "I'll help you find it," Liam finally said, his voice steady, the resolve echoing in his bones. "But we must prepare for what we might uncover." The wind howled softly, signaling the encroaching storm. With their hearts pounding in synchrony, they faced the abyss together, knowing that the search for Ambrosia was not merely about defying death, but about understanding what it truly meant to live. Life, death, love, loss. Mara whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the vast tapestry of night. "They're all intertwined, aren't they?" "Like shadows beneath the stars," he replied, their eyes locking, a deep understanding blossoming between them. And as the clock struck midnight, they stepped forward, ready to confront the mysteries that lay ahead, weaving through the tapestry of existence, searching for a truth that could either save them or shatter them entirely. What they might find in that pursuit was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were no longer alone. The shadows whispered and the stars blinked in silent agreement, the dance of life echoing in the darkness, an eternal cycle, an unending quest. The lessons of Ambrosia were waiting, and they were ready to embrace whatever came next.